right, Joe. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
We're going to need you to start us off with a coin flip with a soon-to-be rare
eliminated.
1 cent.
Not rare. There's a ton. Soon to be eliminated.
Yeah, soon to be eliminated from the mint. Okay.
The soon to become a collector's edition.
Doubtful
There we
available.
Call it.
Oh. We already seen it. Do it again.
Somebody monkey
All right,
that.
ready?
Come up.
Ready?
Who done it? Who's calling it?
Heads or tails?
Oh, I get to call it?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's flip it.
Go.
I'm going to go tails.
Okay, what do we got here?
Oh, look at it. It's a good flip. Oh, heads. All right.
We got heads.
I get to start it off today.
Okay.
Today on the Creatures Cortex podcast, we have Joseph Evans, all right, from the Kind Idaho and running for Congress, right?
U.S. Senate.
U.S. Senate. Okay.
Yes, this is the U.S. Senate. I'm going for Washington, D.C.
All right. And
Challenging James Risch on the Republican ticket.
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also known as Jim.
Jim. Yeah.
Yeah.
James.
Awesome. So how's that going?
Well, we still are a year out from the primary elections.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we got some things coming together. Campaign managers getting on board, and we're getting ready to start doing the rounds of meet and greets, showing up at the events, starting to get engagements for speaking,
Okay.
and of course podcasts.
Oh, good.
Got to get the suit and tie on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, got to get the suit and tie on.
Have
Gotta
you,
dress up, clean up?
Have you any like debates set up with?
No debate set up yet. Just sort of waiting for some of that stuff to start falling in place. You know, like I said, we're still a year out, so not
There's still a
everybody's
lot of
real
time.
concerned. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
still a lot of time. You know, we haven't reached the point where everybody's bombarding, you know, the networks with ads and all that. So,
Oh yeah.
Spot time.
So, all right. Well, how I met you is I reached out to Kind Idaho, and I was interested in the petition status. And
Yeah.
you know, me and Chad, we are supporters of at least some kind of legalization and some common sense laws.
right.
And so we wanted to talk about that. And so, what is the petition status right now? How's it going?
Well, so right now the petition is in the stage where we are collecting signatures.
Mhm.
We went through all of the process with the Secretary of State. There are 45 days for, you know, steps 1, 2, 3, and so on. Got back, started collecting signatures back last November.
Yeah.
Now, we're currently expanding the volunteers, helping getting them organized, helping them get out to events. You know, like some of the events we were out at HempFest,
Yeah. How'd that
you know,
go?
not that long ago. I think we collected about 2,000 signatures
Nice.
at HempFest. You know, still a long ways from the 70,000 we need total.
It seems like a lot, right?
Right, it does seem like a lot, especially when you start looking at the requirement for distribution.
Mm-hmm. And you have
Yeah.
to get a certain percent out of each district, right?
6% of 18 of the 35 districts.
Mhm.
As long as we get those 18 districts qualified, it doesn't matter where the other 70,000, where the balance of the 70,000 signatures come from.
Yeah, I volunteered quite a while ago to help get signatures with a group with a guy named William, really awesome dude, and it was really fun, great experience. I got hundreds, if not thousands, of signatures, and so me personally, I've always wanted to try to do something to help the cause, and that's why I was like, let's reach out to Kind Idaho and get someone on, and they sent you, which was really cool. We
What's his idea?
yeah, you know, because I've been following you guys for a while.
Yeah,
on
we appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
and listening to what's going on and the arguments. So the general obstacles that you need to overcome to get this petition that you have going past, what would you say that was?
Well,
Sounds like numbers.
numbers is a big one,
Sounds
but
like
a lot of
numbers,
it
dude.
is, yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Numbers is a big one, you know, and part of the problem is familiarity with what the laws are and what it is we need to and want to do.
Hmm.
You know, Kind Idaho for the last 6 years has been working on a number of different petitions.
Yeah.
You know, we ran the Kind Idaho Medical Marijuana Act for 2 circulations. And one of the problems we had with that was it was very big. It was very expensive to print off. Just printing off one petition for 20 signatures was running us in the neighborhood of $5 a print.
So you can assume that was just for medical marijuana.
That was just for medical,
not recreational.
Not recreational.
Got it.
So before we go a little bit further, it kind of explain that, because this is something that people don't think about when it comes to these petitions, is the cost of the paperwork and the requirements that they impose on you to get these signatures, which are quite costly and not easy to do.
Yeah. Exactly. So the thing was Kind Idaho was about 14 pages on legal paper. 7 front and back.
Heavy duty.
Heavy duty, exactly. And you can only put 20 signatures per petition, but you got to put the whole petition together. The signature sheet has to be attached to the rest of the package. So you're taking 20 divided by 70,000 divided by 20. That's 3,500 sheets, and you're paying $5 per package.
You look, more numbers,
right?
And
more numbers.
Specific kind of paper, right? It can't be just like any kind of paper.
Yes, ebony.
No, I'm serious. Like
or bone.
Actually,
acceptable.
Just standard 20-pound office paper works for most of it.
Perfect.
Now, with our medical program, we had to do it on the legal paper because it's actually cheaper to do it on the legal paper per signature.
In bulk?
In bulk.
Now, got that.
Right? Now, so one of the things that we did this last time, and this is the iteration we're doing this time, is we went with a nice, simple bill. 1 page. We have our titles, which the AG was nice enough to write up for us and say, hey, this is what the initiative does.
Thank you, attorney.
Right.
It's their job, right?
Right. That's their job. Then, of course, the letter of the law, the initiative, 1 page, simple, easy to read. And then we move into, of course, the funding statement. And finally, the signature page. Nice, easy, small package. We're able to do it on regular office paper, 8.5 by 10, collect our 20 signatures. This is 50 cents to print as opposed to $5.
Sounds much more reasonable.
So, Joe, like this is something that me and Chad's talked about often, about how big these bills are and how ridiculous that they expect anyone to read them and understand them in detail. What you did right there is perfect, right?
Yeah.
Everyone can read it.
Simplified.
A politician could read it. A regular person could read it. Even
Absolutely.
if it was confusing, there's enough there they could look up some words and figure it out.
Yeah. And that was the big thing with the medical marijuana initiative. That was huge.
A lot of jargon in there.
A lot of jargon in there because you had to set up the program. Who could grow it? Who could sell it? Who could issue the medical marijuana cards and under what conditions? And who was going to maintain the database of who had medical marijuana cards?
So it sounded like it's really complex.
No, it's not going to be you.
No, it ain't going to be me. I'll tell you that.
And that was one of the problems we had with the initial one was people were coming up and saying, well, okay, who's got access to know that I have a medical marijuana card? Well,
the government.
Well, Department of Health and Welfare is. And they're going to keep that in an office, probably the same office with somebody from Child Protective Services.
Yeah. And no one wants to tangle with those if you're a parent. That's a
exactly
nightmare, right?
Exactly. So people were going, I'm not sure how comfortable I feel having CPS. No, I got a medical card.
Yeah.
They're going,
or guns.
Or guns. The other big issue was guns.
Almost everyone has guns, so that's a huge
And if
issue.
you get a medical marijuana card, now you're documenting that you're using it in violation of federal law.
Mm-hmm.
So when you fill out the paperwork for your firearm, you got to go, yeah, I'm breaking federal law. Well, no guns for you.
Yeah.
And if the state of Idaho wants to get real nasty about it, that's justification to come in, search your house, and remove your guns and your kids.
And it's weaponizing the law, which we've seen here a lot here lately.
Oh,
and it seems to, I don't know if it's getting any better anytime soon. It's probably going to be trending for a while.
No, because one of the things that we have experienced this last session, even, they wrote the law that set a mandatory minimum of $300 fine for possession of marijuana.
Which I was going to bring up, so thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, now that mandatory minimum $300, okay, that's shake in a baggie in the bottom of your pocket.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They're just like, you have this. Here's the fine.
Here's the fine.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is that wasn't even that was just sort of like adding insult to injury, because simple possession of marijuana in the state of Idaho already carries a mandatory 100 hours of community service. Okay. You got to jump through hoops in order to get that documented. That's 100 hours of time. That's opportunity cost at a minimum of $15 an hour. That's what you get paid in just about any job here in the state right now.
I honestly can't believe they're making laws that are against marijuana. I mean, just because the knowledge is so common about how these laws were enacted in the first place, from prejudice, from corporate greed, misinformation, that's things that they wrote about the cannabis at that time. If you read those right now, you would swear you're reading something about fentanyl. Okay, that's how bad it was.
You know what's kind of funny is in Idaho, previously to this, if you got in trouble with weed, the majority of the time, the police officers, when you get booked in jail, will knock it down, or at least further in the stages in the court system as you're getting in trouble, will knock it down to a paraphernalia.
Quite honestly,
they wouldn't even give you weed charge.
I don't think
it would be dropped to a paraphernalia, and you'd get like a little bit of community service and pay a fine.
Well, and that's one of the things. It came down to selective enforcement.
Correct. Yeah, and selective prosecuting.
And selective prosecution.
Correct. What are we going to spend our money and time on?
Right.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to selective, these officers, it's not consistent. One day one officer will decide this kid needs to be arrested for it, and the next day another officer will say no, they don't.
Yeah, that's the
or the same officer will look at the rich kid and go home to dad, and the poor kid's on his way in. So you start seeing this degree of bias, especially when you're looking at a mixed community, mixed heritage community like we have here in the Treasure Valley. You have an awful lot of immigrants, second, third generation Latino families. They've been here. They're native. Their kids were born here. Mom and dad was born, his grandpa and grandma that came across, that was doing the migrant work in the 70s. 2 generations, they've been born here, but we still got cops that think you're too brown for here, boy.
Well, I mean, we don't have any laws that say this for this race or that race. Well, I mean, sure there is. Sure is. Don't get me wrong, but there shouldn't be for this. But the numbers tell you differently about who's getting prosecuted,
exactly,
who's being thrown in jail,
and that's the selective enforcement. It's dependent upon the just reasoning of the officer, of the district attorney, of the judge, and in some cases, the public defender.
Yeah, your fate's not yours if you get fucking caught.
No,
it's up to many hands.
Yeah. Many hands.
Yep. Especially here in Idaho, it's kind of strange, but like you consider like Washington, Oregon, California, places surrounding us. So they just laugh. But
let's talk about the benefits to Idaho versus the negatives of legalizations, because let's really boil it down here. Okay, Oregon is profiting hand over fist on the Idaho because of their status on cannabis, right? Just look at Ontario, and I'm glad that they've got a real giant boost in their economy. It's been nice to see, but why can't that be our boost, right? And
exactly.
It seems like a bad business decision.
Yeah, I got a cousin who was actually on the Malheur County School Board. And he'd occasionally, we'd have conversation. Matter of fact, next week I'm headed over to Unity for the big family reunion. But we'd talk about that as, hey, keep coming over here and spending your money. Yeah. My kids are going to a good school now because they're thank you. Malheur County school quality's gone up, sports programs gone up. They're going, thanks for funding our schools. We spend $2.5 million in Malheur County alone every week.
Yeah.
Okay. And that tax money turns around and goes right back into the schools there. Idaho was responsible for 10% of Oregon's legal sales every year since Malheur County opened up.
And every border town in Oregon is enjoying it. Every
absolutely. Well, and it's not just
the
Oregon.
Idaho bound ones.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, thing is we're legal in just about every state
even
around us
Washington.
right now.
Washington
So
has
Spokane,
legalization, we don't care
Washington.
about it.
Yeah. Well, Spokane, Washington.
Well,
They're continue getting their portion.
Yeah.
Okay, you got Bozeman, Montana for everybody in Idaho Falls,
It's
and
not so much Spokane itself, of course. It's outlying to your,
right. Because Spokane doesn't actually want dispensaries inside city limits.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Technicality, but
but it's like Dry Town, right across the border, right outside of city limits. There's a dispensary. But jackpot. Nevada's got it.
Oh, do they now?
They got one.
Oh, wow.
Well,
they got one dispensary, and it's really expensive. Yeah, it's just.
But the thing is
due south of the casinos.
Interesting.
90% of the residents of the state of Idaho are within a 1-hour drive of a border town dispensary. 90%, and that's all money we're losing. We figure somewhere in the neighborhood about $3 to $4 million a week is leaving the state to purchase part of another state's significant economy.
And
it's hard to say those numbers.
These aren't criminals.
Should be more.
These are regular people.
Yeah.
Right? Regular people that hold down to everyday jobs, even like very high-end jobs that go down and support their economy with the money from here. It's a shame. And as I said, I think it's a bad business decision on our politicians unless they have invested interest in the industries that legalization would hurt.
Like alcohol
and tobacco and pharmaceuticals. Okay.
Well, and that's all of those.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other thing is drug-related policies, the drug arrests. Okay. Idaho is one of those few states that I consider a modern slave state. Okay. We are one of 4 states in the United States that allow the export of prison labor products.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
Okay, and the people who are allowed to work in these shops, in these factories on the work release program are the non-violent offenders. So guess who's working in the chicken factory out by the pen? The non-violent offenders. The roughly 60% of our prison population that are in for drug-related offenses and just drug-related offenses.
Or stuff like forgery, stealing, stuff that didn't hurt someone.
Well, yeah.
I'm
there's
sure
course.
There's a mix, but
there's a mix.
Does the people that have no violent offenses need to be in there? No, they probably need some mental, emotional, physical, monetary support to get to figure shit out.
Well, what they need to do is they need to be home with their kids.
Sure.
These are fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, that are being stripped away from their families, being stripped away from their relationships. They're not able to continue to provide support for many of these, which now their families are on state welfare because there's a lost income. In addition to that, the family now has to support somebody who is in the prison system, who will be under Department of Corrections supervision for easily the next 3 to 4 years, even once they are out. So you have this additional trauma built on top of everything. Meanwhile, they got to be dry from the one thing that's been helping them. They no longer have access to whatever relief it was providing them before, whether it was related to their anxiety, whether it's related to pain, associated with a medical condition. They're cold turkey while they're inside, unless they're receiving it illegally on the inside.
Or unless you have like a prescription through a doctor for something weird. Some people manipulate the system with that.
I had a friend that was in trouble for a while, and he told me that all he's seen in there was fentanyl pills. I was like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah, fentanyl pills everywhere." I was like, "Wow, that's crazy, right?" And so that's your prison system.
That's your prison system. More fentanyl than you get on the outside with access to your doctor.
right? If you didn't go into junkie, you might come out.
Exactly.
Yeah, because what else is there to do?
Yeah.
There's lots to be said about the criminal system, and it's over cumbersome for the regular person.
You step outside of that and you take a look at the other things. The state-run liquor stores.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that affects the profit on those.
Yeah.
Okay, because now there's a comparable other source for people to spend money on in order to change their perceptions, in order to lift their moods, and be able to create an alternative feeling about the depression or the anxiety they feel in their life.
Now, it's not to say they couldn't invest in cannabis and the goods, but the people in power do not like to change the way the money flows. It's always a gamble, right?
Right.
And so that's where the people have to come in, because the business will not want to change, and you have to force it, or
the machine doesn't want to change.
The machine doesn't want it because this is disruptive. It's a disruptive market.
Yeah.
Okay, we've spent 50, 60 years on an established market process.
Mm-hmm.
The black market, how the black market works, how the cartels work within the black market, how the cartels work within the justice system, what is authorized to, grow, produce, and in what context. So whether you're talking alcohol sales through the state liquor program, or whether you're using cartel black market money in order to accomplish something, which is sometimes recouped by the state through lawyers' fees associated with arrests, seizures, especially when you're looking at full drug-related seizures. What's the term for that? Imminent, or it's not imminent domain, but where you,
gotcha.
where you. You're running drugs, so we're going to take your car.
Normally they try to RICO case you.
Right.
And
in the RICO case,
like
when
that,
you're doing something significant.
Yeah, it gives you a different set of parameters that you could operate by as far as collecting intelligence and, going about doing the prosecuting and arresting.
Mm-hmm. So these are things that are associated with it. In addition to that, you're challenging the status quo of the medical system.
Mm-hmm.
The number of people who are going across the border for medical reasons, they're no longer getting their prescriptions from their doctors. They're no longer going to, the St. Luke's physicians clinics that are now established in every small community in the state. So now your doctors, the changing in perspective. Right. And right now we can't even get the veterans. We can't get right to try for veterans. Jeremy Kitzhaber was therein providing testimony this last summer about bills like HJR 4 and other marijuana related, his own medical initiative that he started 4 years ago. And what that would mean to him is like he's stage 4 cancer. Only reason he's still alive and breathing today is because of right to try procedures for cancer treatments, particularly veterans.
Yeah.
And he's talked to doctor after doctor after doctor, and they say, dude, just do it. And he's going, no, I can't, because it's criminalized in the state in which I live. And that's where I wanted my family to spend the rest of my life with.
Here's another effect of marijuana legalizations. Because of that, other things will not be pursued, like the
hemp industry.
No. Like what's that drug that showed a lot of progress? Ibogaine. Ibogaine.
Right.
Which has been approved just in Texas. Apparently.
Right. Texas just opened up the program. Dana Beal's a huge proponent for it. He's working on trying to get passage of a similar program in New York.
Yeah.
In order, and a lot of this has multiple use. One is PTSD, another's drug recovery, particularly meth.
And alcohol. And also
alcohol.
Psilocybin studies, which
the psilocybin studies and MDMA.
Great progress.
Yeah.
Hallucinogenics.
Yeah. So this is one of those things, marijuana legalization, decriminalization, cannabis opens the door for these other studies, opens the door for these other treatments. Whether you're doing the microdosing psilocybin, whether you're looking at ayahuasca or ibogaine as a means of recovering from PTSD, trauma, other related issues. I need to be careful. It's PTSI.
Is it
right
different now?
Well, no, the thing is when we talk about post-traumatic stress, it's an injury. Okay. Injury implies something you can heal from, something you can recover from. When you say
Post-traumatic
post-traumatic
injury.
stress disorder, it's like, dude, you're sick for life. You're damaged. You're never going to be any better. What are we going to do about that? No, you can heal from it. You can recover from it, which is why it's an injury and not a disorder.
I like it. Words have a lot of power, right? And
They
the
do.
way you say things actually matter. So I like that.
Yeah.
So I am a registered voter, and I would like to sign a petition here on
Right.
the podcast.
Here you go.
I'm proud to do it and support the Idaho economy.
Now, for an awful lot of people out there looking at this right now, what this is a decriminalization initiative. Okay, this doesn't actually allow you to buy and sell within the borders of the state of Idaho. This allows you two options. One is personal use, meaning you can carry up to an ounce on your person or up to 1 gram of
That's a
THC infused.
No one needs more.
Well,
than that.
it is. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no reason to be carrying more than, one vape stick with you at any given time.
Unless you're a dealer.
Unless you're a dealer. And the other thing that it allows is for you to do home cultivation. This allows you to grow up 12 plants of your own.
10th. No, is it? Yeah, 16. All right.
Yeah, 610. This allows you to grow up to 12 plants of your own in your own residence, in your own home, in such a way that you can go ahead and then, however you want to store it, reduce it down so that you can maintain a certain amount up to a half pound of product or equivalent, so that grow your own, take care of your own. And for those people who use this medicinally, especially when they're allergic to certain terpenes or have a particular terpene that they want within, they're able to actually grow a strain or a brand that works best for them. They're not dependent upon what they find in the dispensary on the day they happen to go in.
Yeah.
Do you happen to have some of the OG grape? Maybe, maybe not. So this gives them the ability to pick and choose and do the home cultivation and grow what works best for them.
Smart people don't go by name, they go by number.
So, I've been listening to a lot of people and the anti-marijuana arguments.
Right.
And I really try to find the best argument that I can, like something that's going to really change my mind. I really haven't found it yet versus the benefits of legalization of it. And so one of them that I heard that it seems to be a repeated one is when they decriminalized it in places like Colorado, they said it was going to bring down the crime rate. And so this one has been brought up quite a bit. And at the same time that was happening, they were also like doing stuff like defund the police and
right,
and a lot of unchecked immigration and just pumping in people into who knows into
right. So one of the biggest arguments against legalization has a lot to do with its correlation, and that's all they got is correlation.
Yes.
What sort of things happened when it was legalized? Okay, well, crime went up. Okay, we're going to blame marijuana for that.
Yeah, but how are they linking it to marijuana? I'm pretty sure there was other stuff going on that would.
Well, and that's one of the things that we talk about fairly often. What else was happening when those states were legalizing?
Yes.
The economy was crashing.
Mm-hmm.
We were having a huge influx of immigrants. People were moving from other locations where crime and poverty were standard. You saw an awful lot of people move from, what was becoming very expensive homes in Oakland, California, LA, and they were moving to areas like Colorado. Thing is these weren't Idaho. These people weren't moving, just for the economy. They were moving to escape things.
Yeah.
Okay. And not all of them came with money. Some of them came with the same bad habits that were helping them earn a living and survive.
We could see who came with money. It's pretty easily who's letting 10-year-old kids drive their brand new SUV Lexus and they have the 5-car garage on their 3-story house. They're just brand new here, just came from somebody. It's pretty easy to tell.
Right.
I mean, it's not difficult, but
sell their 600 square foot home for a couple million in LA, turn around and they're living in a McMansion up here.
One of the other ones I hear is it smells. They're like, I don't like the smell. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. I don't like the way some old ladies come by with this ancient perfume that probably was like made in like the 60s. And all right, there's all kinds of smells I don't like. Do I want to? Do y'all want to make
patchouli? The patchouli is the worst.
Boy, that's the easy one to get overboard on. But are we going to make laws about smells? Like, if that was true, everyone would have to wear deodorant, right?
Well,
you think?
Yeah.
And here's one of those things that amazes me, okay? Because you got an awful lot of people moving in here from that. And they're the ones that are actually complaining about the smell. Thing is if you ever been out in Southwest Boise after a good rain and taken a nice, strong smell of all that sweet, fertilized grass underneath the developments.
Yeah. Sometimes you can smell pretty good. Yeah.
If you happen to like the smell of cow manure that's been aged for 15, 20 years, well,
even this place was farm property. Probably like 20 years ago was probably growing something, right?
Dairies,
And all the places from here to Nampa are like filling up quick. It's actually just going to be one connected city. Just like Meridian.
Well, it already is. We already have the Boise metro area, Boise greater metro area that extends from Mountain Home, where the Air Force base is, clear out to Ontario. Ontario is where we drive every day to spend $2.5 million a week on marijuana. Is now included in the greater Boise metro area.
I think because of the amount of too, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's part of the Treasure Valley as well.
It's all part of the Treasure Valley. Weiser, Marsing, Homedale, Ontario,
Sweet Nova, even.
Cuna. Well, Cuna's close enough. But you start looking at just all of this, the Treasure Valley is now responsible for nearly 2/3 of the state's population, between Canyon County and Ada County. It's still growing. It's still populating. We still smell the sugar beet factory, during season.
Now you want to talk about rank? The fumes coming off that can't be good for you.
No, that's just sugar. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
it's just burning sugar. It's just burning sugar.
You'll be all right.
So there's like a million things that we could be. I'm sure there's going to be people listening to this be like, "What, man? Like, there's so many other things we could be doing." But the point is, we shouldn't be sitting here still. And other people said this too, but after all this time, what was it, like 1936 or something when the
it goes back even further than that,
and
because when Boise was first founded, and this comes back to immigration, because we had nomadic farmhands that would always come work in the fields, come help with the harvest, and they would come up with their own versions of marijuana and stuff. At the time they were just using it like chop.
And so many people
throw a couple weed in their cheek and chew it throughout the day.
Yeah, so many people throughout history, really famous, really successful people have been known to and partake and grow and part of their economy even. Hemp was a big part of the economy, and even though that's not a psychoactive plant, like the uses for it are so many. Well, point is, we've all heard all these arguments before.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone that's known anything about it has heard all these before, and it's kind of ridiculous that the politicians are even touching it. Just let it go. Let the people decide, all right? If we want it legal, then we will get the signatures, all right? And if we don't, we won't, okay? But the fact that the politicians are actually fighting it is pretty immature.
It is. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
HJR 4 was the bill was the constitutional amendment that they'll be putting on the ballot when this goes on the ballot.
And that was the one where they have the sole power to legalize, not the people. That they literally wanted to take the power from
the people. Okay, you want to legalize cannabis? You got to lobby the legislature. You want to legalize ibogaine, you want to legalize MDMA, any of these that you want to legalize, the only path is to bribe your lobby your legislator. Because you can't use the initiative process, which means you got to go in and you got to find 35 of them in the House, You got to find 18 of them in the Senate and convince them that this is going to be a benefit to the community, to the veterans, that it's going to bring money in, that it's going to take care of debts, it's going to pay for itself.
You would think if you could convince them that it'll help the veteran population here because we have
Right.
multiple bases, it would
Well,
be a big thing.
And they are perfectly supervised with the veterans doctor. Like, what better conditions could you have for
yeah,
letting people try it?
And that's one of the, I'm a veteran. I've been on combat deployments. I got friends that have come back. They're part of the 22 a day. The number of suicides among veterans that we experience on a daily basis. The number of these veterans coming back from combat deployments with their post-traumatic stress injuries, would be helped by a number of these drugs.
Yes.
Okay. Jeremy
or should have the
Kitzhaber,
option to actually try it if
Yeah.
they wanted to.
Jeremy Kitzhaber, who I've already talked about, has actually sat in with legislators and talked about this. And they have looked at him and said, you should be allowed to do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
But I am not going to lift the ban on it in the state of Idaho just for you.
It's unfortunate he thinks that way because it's not just for him.
No, and it's not just for him.
He's just a person that's brave enough to go up there and state his position and try to do something about it.
Yeah.
And how many other people don't have that kind of strength, to do that, right?
Who has that kind of time? The use of many of these is not just a benefit to the individual, but they're a benefit to the community because it allows those individuals to be positive contributors to everything that happens in their community. They're earning their own income. They're paying their own bills. Okay, so they get high every so often. But they're taking care of themselves and they're not on welfare.
Well,
what you do with your time
it's
after your
ridiculous.
community service for the day is done and you've done all your missions,
Right.
and you're at home alone, should be nobody else's business if you're not hurting anyone
Nobody
else.
else's business.
So, all right. So on that, let's have you tell us how to find your organization so other people can sign your petition.
Sign the petition.
How can they find you? See, I think that's like the biggest logistics problem is like to know where you are
Right.
at.
Because
So they
Hempfest
can.
is over. Can't find you there.
Yeah.
Right? Can't find us at Hempfest.
So how can
So-
they find your future events?
Future events. Right here, folks. kindidaho.org. Go to that website. We got a list of events that are coming up where you'll be able to sign the petition. Other things that we got going on.
Also volunteer there as well.
Volunteer. Sign up to volunteer. Become a notary so that you can notarize these petitions for people who collect the signatures. There's a couple rules. We got the rules on the page. This is a big thing about getting out and being part of the solution, getting this available. And of course, one of the other things that you want to look at with this is who it is you elect. Because we're talking about HJR4. It's going to be on the ballot when this is on the ballot. Okay, you want to elect people who are going to make sure this passes. And not only that, you want to look at electing people who are going to make sure it works at the federal level.
And not electing
If
people
we get it descheduled. Like
who are taking
yours truly.
laws or the powers from the people. That
Right.
pisses me off, really.
Well, and that's one of the other things. We got the DEA and the FDA and the NIC and the CDC. Every one of these have been involved in the process of criminalizing it. These organizations have proven, particularly through COVID, that these are institutions that cannot be trusted and literally need to be disassembled for the greater good of the United States.
Well, sometimes it might not even be them. It's the laws that they are forced to
Abide
by. And I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a whole lot of police officers like, I don't want to deal with this. There's I could be dealing with really important things and doing a job that I really wanted to do, not just sitting here writing a ticket for this guy that had a bag in his pocket.
Exactly.
Right?
But you need to elect people who take those laws off the books. You need to elect people locally. You need to elect people nationally, like me.
See, this is why I like the podcast, because we get to know the people that we're electing, and so that's awesome for you to come on here. Even though we're pretty small, we're going to get bigger, but thank you for coming here
Well,
and talking about this.
that's one of the things I love about the long form. Okay, short, come on, 30 seconds, do the 60-minute questionnaire with Tucker. I've already got the questions ahead of time. I rehearsed them.
Yeah.
I can lie like a mother for 30 minutes. I come in here long form. I don't know what the questions are. I don't know where this conversation is leading.
No, we actually get to know you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we like to bring up kind of like the subject matter. We know a lot of musicians, so a lot of times we're talking musicians, sort of like Joe Rogan talks to comedians. And
UFC fighters.
Yes,
yeah.
And so literally, Joe, you're our first non musician friend that we've had on. So thank you for doing that. Well, let's move on to our next subject. Chad, you want to bring us in on that?
Sure. Talk about some movies, huh?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, we got Predator Badlands coming out soon. Pretty excited for that.
Nice.
You know what that one is?
They're doing some samurai and some.
No. That's Killer Killers.
Oh, is that Killer Killers?
That's Killer Killers, the TV show. It wasn't even really a TV show. It was like a 3-part series, essentially.
I'm not.
You're out of the loop,
I'm out of the loop on that one. All right.
All right. Well, how about this? Have you seen the previews for Badlands? Predator Badlands?
No, I've not seen the previews for
Are you a fan of the Predator stuff?
It's done some good stuff. I really like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his first one, and some of the other ones after. Definitely got to go with Schwarzenegger for the first one, though.
It's a classic.
Yeah, it is classic.
Absolutely. Speaking about classics, you guys remember the movie The Rocketeer?
Yes. I
Yes,
love that movie.
yes.
Yeah.
Quality movie. Just watched that the other
Yeah,
day.
it was not bad. They did a really good job. Who was the director? I think that was like Steven Spielberg, wasn't it?
I'm not sure, but probably somebody famous.
Yeah.
I'd assume. It was a great movie.
It was well directed.
Anyways, we got Mortal Kombat 2 coming out soon. I'm stoked for that one.
Yeah.
Fatality.
Yep. Apparently, they just had a small screening of it. Everybody loved it, of course.
Nice.
It would have been nice to get an invite.
Yeah, right. You got any more?
Now let's jump into our movie we want to rank up here.
Yeah. We talked to Joe before the podcast, and we asked him what movie we wanted to talk about, and he agreed to The 13th Warrior. And so
Good agreement. Great movie.
It came out in August 27th of 1999. So
Right.
what did that movie? What do you remember about that movie?
What did it invoke in you?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I was a big book nerd in school. So it's like, they come out with, the 13th Warrior, and it's sort of out of context. But it's like you start watching the movie and you go, wait, this is the Epic of Beowulf.
Yeah.
So you start getting into the whole mythology of, the epic, and then Ibn's version of what's going on within the system, the way they rewrote it in a context that makes it less fanciful and more realistic, but it still has those same core elements.
And from his perspective, going into a Viking culture from an Arabic culture, which was really interesting.
And it wasn't just Arabic; it was an Islamic culture that he was coming from, because this was during the era when you actually had Islamic clerics that were teaching the madrasas. This was so the introduction of Allah into an environment where you were still involved with people who worshipped Odin and the Norse deities, Thor, going on to Valhalla, the old gods.
Yep.
You're listening to
pre-monotheism when everyone had multiple gods at one time. I think it was the Jewish that actually came up with the one God.
It predates that, but we're going to start getting into a seminary thing that's going to be a long drawn out.
And there'll be someone who'll be like, "You're totally wrong.
You're so full of."
You don't know what you're talking about.
No, I get it.
Yeah. But 13 Warrior is awesome. I looked it up online. I can't believe it had a 33% on Rotten Tomatoes. So
yeah, it's surprising.
That literally just discredited Rotten Tomatoes, because it should be like at least a 99.8%.
And if it's not, right? It should be.
Yeah.
Antonio Banderas. I think there were expectations for it being a Banderas movie. because he went on to do great things like playing Puss in Boots in Shrek.
Quality role. Almost as good as the mariachi.
Almost as good as the mariachi. But, seeing him, play that perspective, which was more something, because he wasn't the primary action character.
Hmm.
He was the protagonist. That's because he was the storyteller.
Yeah, he's not the hero of the story.
No,
Bubble
he's not
Life
the
is
hero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And so he was along for the ride, basically.
Yeah, he was along for the
got
ride.
Throwing in.
I like how they showed his learning progression through sitting through the campfires. Then they're calling him a dog, and he finally starts to realize, and he's like, "You are the dog."
That was an
Love
amazing story progression right there.
Yep, it was quality.
Whoever came up with that was awesome. Just that scene alone was really good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good content.
So we do a ranking on these. So let's start with the story. What would you, from a 1 to 10, what would you say the story is on this?
I gotta go with about an 8 on the story.
8 on the story?
One is just because the story wasn't an original. It was
a take on Beowulf.
Yeah, it was a take on Beowulf. So it's built on original. It was a cover, so to speak.
Not only Beowulf, but it was also the storyline was by Michael Crichton, and it was from the 76 book Eaters of the Dead.
Oh.
He did a novel, Eaters of the Dead, and it told this story of the foreigner, Islamic foreigner, even coming over, meeting the
Michael Crichton is a great writer.
Oh, yes,
Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dude, I give the story a 10 out of 10 because
You
I
got a 10?
loved it. I love that movie.
I'll split it at a 9.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So
Well, what's your vote? Your vote is a 9 or what? What do you think?
It wasn't a perfect movie, but it was pretty close to being like 100%. And I'll tell you why here shortly. The effects, the whole effects of the movie,
all practical. Yep, great costumes.
I don't think anything was corny, quite honestly. What do you think there, Joe?
The costumes were actually extremely well done.
Mm.
You saw some low tech people from up north who had acquired through raids in various other battles better armor of different types. You saw everything from chain to plate.
Even a
Some
stagecraft.
fur.
Really
stagecraft.
good.
You saw 5 different types of headgear. Helmets.
Yeah.
Not only that, the bear costumes.
Oh,
The bear
awesome.
costumes.
The Ven.
Yeah. Even the fights, the way they use the shield.
That fight scene was probably one of the best scenes in the movie.
Which one? The giant redheaded dude
With
against the smallest
with
guy?
the-
Right.
Yeah,
with
it's
the
great.
3 shields, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, so what do you give the effects? 1 through 10?
I got to give the effects 10.
10,
They
10.
did
I
do
agree.
some novel things. And you saw it in the after effects, the way the final scene with Antonio Banderas with the rain running down, and then they had to run it backwards, and then they had to...
I'm also going to give it a 10, and here's why. Because they didn't overdo the effects. They didn't.
No.
For the story, they did exactly what they needed.
Mm.
So, yeah, I give it a 10 as well. All right. So, rewatchability. Is it a rewatchable movie? Can we
10
can we
out of
put
10.
this on at
10
any
out
time?
of 10.
Yes, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. Yeah,
10
that's
out
a
of 10. That's not hard.
All right.
Talent.
The actors. Well, how good were the actors? Did the overall acting of all the actors? I don't think there was a bad one, honestly. What do you think?
They did the roles perfectly, and that's really what it comes to when you're talking about acting.
Yeah.
Even the combats, the stunts, working through the different scenes,
Yeah,
Bovine.
the fighting was not unrealistic.
No,
Which that always
yeah.
kills me when I see shitty fighting scenes. I'm like, who's a choreographer?
Right.
Choreographer had no martial arts experience, but this was really good.
Yeah.
I would have to say, I would say a 9.
That's weak. 10 out of 10.
You give it a 10?
Oh, yeah,
I'm
it
gonna
was
give
great.
him a 10 on the acting
Yeah,
too.
It was great.
All right.
Everybody was solid, dude. I love the nose bridge tattoo guy. He was the funny guy.
Oh yeah.
He just cracked me up the whole time. All of them were great, dude.
All right, I'm going to go with the 10.
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
Music.
Quotability. All right. Does it have any quotes that you could start spouting off, and your friends will know exactly what movie that's from? I would have to give it a yes. And I even wrote down an example. What would you say? Quotability?
Oh yeah, it's definitely quotable.
They have a few of them in this
You
movie.
know, the final prayer,
Mm-hmm.
is a big one. The prayer to Odin, grant me a good death.
Speaking
Yeah.
of that final prayer, all right, I'm going to need some little audience participation after this done. All right, so here we go. Lo, there do I see my mother and my sisters and my brothers. Lo, there do I see a line of my people back to the beginning. Lo, do they call me? They bid me to take my place among them in the halls of Valhalla, where the brave may live forever.
Ah!
All right, there we go.
Yes.
Viking roar. God, what a great freaking movie.
Soundtrack.
Soundtrack
Mm.
is.
We'll rate the quotability.
Yeah,
1 to 10.
Quotes. I was going to give it at least to have one.
Dude, it's got 10 out of 10 because
10
the prayer is great.
I really think Rotten Tomatoes did not do this.
Oh,
movie.
they did not do it. They did not do it justice.
Maybe they didn't watch it.
All right, and so the music score, that was my biggest deal with the music score. I didn't think was bad, but it was not Conan the Barbarian good, right?
Could have been more epic.
It could have been more epic.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's like my lowest ranking on there.
Yeah, and I don't even care because the rest of the story, the action was great.
Yeah, I'll give him a 7 because it was not bad, but it wasn't good enough to be noticeable, right? It didn't pump up the scenes.
You mean you're not going to buy the vinyl?
No.
Oh,
Exactly.
weak. I'd buy it. You got to start that collection.
So I
dude.
give it a 7. What do you think about the score?
I'm going to go with 9 because I think it was properly accented for some of the scenes.
Fair.
Like when they're watching the dragon come out of the mountain.
Right, you hear the horns.
Yeah.
Right,
Thunder
hearing the
of battle.
horns, the thunder, and then it's like,
Fire.
it's cavalry.
All right, so you
Almost
7,
wish
you
it
got
had been a dragon.
a 9. That was really cool scene though, and good storytelling too.
Yeah.
The fog always proceeds.
All right, what are you giving it, Chad?
I'll go 9 out of 10, dude, because I like since we're going soundtrack, I like the entirety of it. I think it was all a great movie.
Okay, I'll give it an 8 for
You don't have to. Don't let me change your mind here.
8 it is. Okay, so
Okay, count them up, math wizard.
So 40, 49, 57. So it's a 57 out of 60. Yeah, I would say that's a little bit better than 33% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, yeah.
Like it.
And this is 3 dudes, right? The 3 real dudes that just talked about a most awesome movie. I don't even know if it did good in the box office. I should have looked that up. But some movies don't when they're competing with like really mega movies.
99 Matrix coming out.
Maybe it didn't take
Mhm.
off until it came out on VHS like some movies did at that time. But man,
Well, I watched it. You watched it. You watched it.
Yep.
They watched it.
and so it got a pretty epic score from this podcast. So way to go, 13th Warrior. So next is TV. You watch any TV? Anything?
You waste your time on it.
Yeah.
I very rarely watch anything on
YouTube
TV.
videos, anything
He's taking a look at YouTube video, doing the doom scroll thing in the 5 minutes I got between running off to do tasks.
Do you watch
Whether it's
Fishing
meet
Garrett?
and greets, as doing meet and greets with the parties,
No.
doing my campaign, helping with Kind Idaho, my opportunity to actually sit down and, because that's one of the problems I got when I sit down to a TV series is I want to binge. It's like everything's come out. I want to sit down. I'm going to spend the next 14 hours. I'm going to watch all 14 episodes and, I'm going to sleep through the next day.
Well, you better stay away from Cobra Kai. Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that's why we need the contact lens that has playability in it, so you can just watch it throughout the day.
Right? Get
Yeah.
the little flip screen and just,
Yeah, the glasses with augmented reality. It has a little TV there on the corner for you.
You guys see
it's
that
going to happen.
you guys see the 13th Ghost 13 Ghost TV shows coming out soon.
Dude,
You guys remember the movie 13
really
Ghosts?
good. So
Yeah,
it,
Matthew
Yeah.
Lillard in it,
Yeah.
Scooby Doo.
it better not be a bad
Yeah, Tony
TV show.
Shalhoub.
but it has a good premise
I'd assume
to
it'd be
make
good.
make a TV because they had a lot of ghosts, right?
13 ghosts.
Yeah. So they're gonna make 13 episodes.
I believe they said it's 13 episodes.
You mean they're not just gonna make 10?
Yeah, they might make 9.
Jeez, like I'm so tired of the 10 episode. For anything coming out, they're like, we're gonna make 10 episodes. You know, I grew up on Star Trek, right? You know how many episodes we got per season?
56.
Something crazy,
Ridiculous
like that.
number, yeah.
And
then it goes into syndication. So you're watching, the same 53, for the next 5 years.
And so when I get 10 episodes, I'm like, oh, that's so lame.
Yeah, it's weak.
Yeah.
So, 10
But it makes the
Trimmers
binging
coming
easy.
out.
It makes the binging easy.
What, 10 episodes?
Yeah.
It's unsatisfying.
6 would make it easy.
Yeah.
New Trimmers coming out with Kevin Bacon. 10
Kevin
episodes.
Bacon is coming back.
Mhm.
I can't believe it. That guy is so awesome. He's still rocking hard. Like he posts videos of him on his farm all the time and
Yeah, he does.
playing music to his goats and chickens.
Mhm.
It's cool. Yeah, Kevin Bacon is a character. I love Trimmers. We did a review on Trimmers not too long ago.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. I don't remember what the score was, but I'm sure it was pretty damn good.
I don't think we counted it up.
No, maybe not. Maybe it was one of those ones we flubbed it.
Who flubbed what? No, we went with the flow.
No, we
You
got this like ranking that we were working on in the movies, and we accidentally did not do it once or twice, and we were like, we should have done that. So I got a Dexter Resurrection coming out on July 11th. I love the Dexter series, super good, and they didn't kill him off in the last series, which was also really good. The last episode, last season. So they're coming back July 11th on Paramount Plus.
Well, it sounds like you watched that one.
Well, I mean,
or dabble in it.
I dabbled in that one. I was in the service, so I had a lot of time on deployments.
Yeah.
Sitting in Iraq, after work, nothing else to do, but me and a couple of the guys and TV, and we had access to DVDs out the yin yang. So you'd sit it in, and again, back to binge watching, because what else are you going to do when you're stuck on a fob out in the middle of nowhere? Got the TV, your laptop, because that's what we were playing it on. Doing the work, plug in a DVD in the laptop, set it up, watch it, go through 6-7 episodes a night, go through like all 5 seasons of Dexter.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, it's great because the Dexter series is so littered with the dark humor that veterans and first responders enjoy
And
so
the
much.
rewatches of it were
Right.
good. Like the second time it came through, I was like, "Oh, there's all kinds of stuff I did not catch the first time." So it's really good to rewatch.
The little hints, the things that you drop that get dropped, that you don't notice the first time.
Yep.
Lithgow's role in what was that, season 5?
Oh, I've always loved that guy. He's such an awesome actor.
That was one of those like Robin Williams in 24-Hour Photo. It's like these are actors, these are comedians, and you're used to their comedy roles, and then they turn around and play this total freaking psycho.
Well, it just shows them how multifaceted they can be,
right?
And how much more talent than the lane that they usually have.
Oh, you mean they are an actor?
Yeah. Some of them are. Some of them.
No,
are they an actual actor, or is their humor hiding something darker?
Oh, right. Could be their personality just coming out. They just get the right role.
And,
right.
We also have a new South Park season coming out on July 9th. And I don't know if you're into South Park, but man, it's some of the best comedy on earth. I am excited for it. They're going to talk about taking over Canada, and they just
it's not like there's a shortage of information, of stuff to work with on that right now.
They poke so much fun.
I mean, they're going to be able to poke fun at Canada. They're going to be able to poke fun at Ukraine and Russia. They're going to be able to poke fun at the LA riots right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the options coming up, for the next season of that, just
unlimited ammo for comedy.
Unlimited.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So you got anything else on TV?
Well, I talked about it a little bit earlier. The Killer of Killers, Predator, the animated one, where it has the Viking, the samurai, and then a World War II pilot. Yeah, it's pretty damn good, dude. I just waited until Jess went to bed because she doesn't love animated shit. So I was like, all right, I'm watch it at midnight.
It's hard for my wife to get into, dude.
So I was like, all right, I don't want her to talk. I don't want her to ruin the story because she will. So I just waited for her to go to bed, and I watched it. It's pretty quick and easy, and I loved it, dude. As a fan of the franchise.
So, Joe, are you a a book guy? Do you like to read anything?
I absolutely love books. I haven't been able to get into do a lot of reading. Spent some time the other day with my daughter. She's doing a little bit of research for a book report that she wanted to do on banned books, especially here. So Sherman Alexie wrote a book. So I got the budget Audible version because she sat there next to me for about 4 hours and read, the real true stories of a part-time Indian, to me out loud for 4 hours. But as far as classic books, the ones I really like, I'm big on Frank Herbert,
Nice.
Dune, J.R.R. Tolkien. Of course, grew up on C.S. Lewis, and a lot of those other authors, Paul French or Isaac Asimov, Foundation series and Lucky Star Ranger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's happened to say Tolkien because I got The Hobbit here, and that's one of the books I was going to talk about. So I think J.R.R. Tolkien's work should be like literally taught in school, in every school. All right.
He was a teacher. He probably did.
And because
Mission accomplished.
Fantasy is very important. To develop your imagination, I think, is a tool that the schools really don't encourage.
Well, that's not what they want.
But
they don't want free thinkers.
As humans,
no, they don't want free thinkers.
We can be taught that, and being a creative individual actually helps you solve a lot of problems in your life, right? Because then you can start thinking through problems. You can find different solutions to things. So the imagination is very important to develop.
Absolutely.
And when you read books, you tend to imagine what you're reading. You're actively using the images in your brain to produce
using
the
your third
images.
eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're reading. So even though I don't know, a lot of these youngins probably have never picked up a book in life, it's unfortunate. But if anyone's listening to this, you should. And you should embrace it for a while and try it out. Maybe you like it, maybe you're not. But
why do they need to pick up a book? Because movies made about just about every one of the books that's popular among a particular genre within a year or two out.
And here's why: when you're reading books, you get the thoughts behind the person, which you can't transcribe on a visual level very well. Very very limited on visual to transfer the thoughts of the person. You can only guess.
It's being done for you.
In the book,
it's being done for you.
In the
Exactly.
book, you get to hear their thoughts and their reasonings and why they're doing things.
But what this does is it transitions it from you trying to understand and interpret from a first person view to now you're imagining the hero as a third person.
Except in Doom, where they did the first person.
Well, except in Doom, but even Doom, that was nice because Rock got in there and he's like, "I'm the main character. Why am I dying?" Right up there with Steven Seagal in Executive Decision, where he dies in the first 5 minutes. It's like, I came to see The Rock. How'd he die in the first 5 minutes? But no, what it does is it distances you. One is it transfers you from being part of the hero role in the first person in the way you read it, because you are the protagonist as you read. Okay, as soon as they turn it into a movie, you're now third person. You're an observer. You're waiting for the hero to come save you rather than being the hero of the story. So that takes away that hero perspective, that hero's journey, because now rather than being Ajax, you're watching Ajax. Instead of being Achilles, you're now watching Achilles. It turns you from an active participant in the story of the hero into a passive one. And what that does is it makes you passive in life rather than an active part of the storyteller, and prevents you from participating in the fullest and creating the story necessary for the development of culture and civilization, which is what our goal is here today, to be part of the story, build the culture, build the civilization, so that the history of America lasts longer than 250 years.
Yeah. And what our founding fathers, what they did wasn't absolutely perfect, but that's why they made it amendable.
Yeah.
Right? And we've amended it 17 times or something like that.
Once you start taking a look past the Bill of Rights.
But apparently it's
27 some amendments. Yeah.
but yeah, and we've literally built the greatest nation or economy on earth. In the history that we know. I honestly think a lot of ancient history is just forgotten history, and we really don't know what happened. And
I mean,
good.
Yeah.
From 1775, 1776, when the revolution that gave Americans control over the colonies, we have managed to become a global power that has transcended every empire prior. You know, it used to be the sun never set on the British Empire. We've now transcended that. The sun never sets on the American flag. You know, we have the flag strategically placed all around the globe. There is an embassy in, 120, 140 countries.
We even got a flag on the moon.
We even got a flag on the moon. So
soon.
we are now the penultimate, from a historical perspective, empire. We provide, we trade, we educate. We have people from nations around the world that come to the United States for an education. Mm-hmm. They come here to learn the tools, to learn the skills, to learn the crafts, to be part of the global community.
And sometimes they come here and learn those skills and then take them back to the community they came from and improve the community.
Right. They take it back to Wuhan. They learn how to...
Well, yeah. There's a pickle, right?
Yeah. But yeah, not only do they come here for an awful lot of our tech, but when they go back to their country, they learn things, that we pioneered here. Mm-hmm. The Green Revolution of the 1970s, that turned, our deserts into virtual fields. The corn we grow now is so much better, faster, grows better than any of the corn we grew, even 20 years ago. Our ability to treat, nourish, and create farmland in such a way that we're essentially living in post-scarcity world right now. Nobody can honestly look at the way we produce food and say that we do not produce enough.
Yeah, and we could there could be no hunger, honestly, if we would just have better policy, I guess.
If our supply chain wasn't so focused on making a buck.
That's true. I mean, did you hear that the gas in California is going to go up to like $8 here pretty soon?
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering how the California economy is going to handle that, because that cranks everything up.
They pay whatever.
Across the board. They can afford it, right? They're rich.
Either that or they move away.
Oh, come on. We just deported a third of the California economy.
Oh, man. They're having quite a time down there. But we're going to get into that too in a minute. Yeah, we're going to talk about that here in a minute. I pulled up the Hobbit book, and so do you remember the part when they're fighting the goblins in the cave, and they had the song when they're running away, and the fire. God, that the cartoon, that was always like one of my favorite parts, because the goblin song was quite honestly metal. Right. Yeah. So
it was such a well orchestrated, doing the rails, the carts, and
the way they made the song, because the words were here first before they made the song, and so the way they made the song with the words was perfect. I'm just going to read one little part of it. 15 birds in 5 fir trees, their feathers were fanned in a fiery breeze, but funny little birds, they had no wings. Oh, what shall we do with these funny little things? Roast them alive, stew them in the pot, fry them, boil them, eat them hot. Like, God, Tolkien is awesome, and this is why he's lasted, the test of time. And I literally think it should be taught in school. Creative writing should be taught in school.
It is, but the thing is Tolkien was the original recipe YouTuber.
Yeah, he took off a lot of mythology from a lot of different places.
Well, no, what I'm talking, the recipe YouTuber. He literally wrote a story so he could talk about food.
Really? Interesting.
I mean, take a look at how many food references there are throughout his books.
Oh, yeah.
The way he sits down and talks about meat, the meals, the pot roast, the potatoes.
have a hobbit,
Potato.
have second and third meals.
We've had first breakfast. What about second breakfast? And 11sies.
Maybe he's a really hungry guy. That's funny. I didn't even think about it like that.
But awesome. I mean, there is so much about food throughout his stories. The meals in the Elven city. The way the dwarves ate, what they ate. He told he had to be a foodie. Straight up, had to be a foodie.
So, I got one more book for you, and this one should mean a lot to you. The Constitution of the United States of America and the Declaration of Independence. What does this book mean to you, Joe?
Okay, what those are the founding documents of the country in which we live in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they are the architecture. They are the bringing forward of the Magna Carta from the English civilization, the modernization of that in the rights of the people versus, the rulership of kings. And you saw the definition in the Constitution, how we limit the government, what it is the state is allowed to do in defense of the people, in defense of the rights of the people, in order to protect life, liberty, and property within the United States, set us up for success over the years so that we aren't a country ruled by kings and aristocrats and oligarchs, but we are a nation of people capable of self-governing.
It seems to me our founding fathers had a great understanding of just how twisted a government could become.
Well, yeah.
And so they put a lot of thought into
a huge amount
limiting the power the government had over the people to produce this fine balance that has made us so successful.
Yeah. The amount of back and forth between the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, in what was the pre-discussion before the Constitutional Convention.
Mm-hmm.
It was 13 years after the Revolutionary War. Only 6 of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence went on to sign the Constitution of the United States. One of those was Benjamin Franklin, of course, with his epic quote, leaving Independence Hall after the convention, so, Mr. Franklin, what kind of government do we have? You have a republic for as long as you can keep it. He understood that role in the transition. Now, it's extremely important for the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists to have their dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you saw in the Constitutional Convention was the Federalists pretty much dominated the scene because they were able to create the sense of the executive power. They were able to create the legislative power, and then they had the judicial branch. And of course, when it came time to appoint all those, most of it went to the Federalists because it was the Federalists who pushed it. But it was the Anti-Federalists, particularly the ones from Massachusetts, that said, we need the Bill of Rights. We will not participate in this new experiment without the ratification of the Bill of Rights. And if it's not passed, there is no experiment. The new government will not come into being.
Well, it's good they did.
And so they passed it. And it's a damn good thing they did.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at federal powers, we're looking at state powers, the 9th and 10th Amendment, which are often forgotten, are still extremely powerful amendments when it comes to what the powers of the people are, what the powers of the state are in relationship to what the powers of the federal government are. And it's like from a constitutional perspective, as a representative, in the House or as a U.S. senator, to be able to roll back those powers to the original Constitution and say, this is all the state needs to do because we are a nation of people that is capable of self-governance.
Yeah, and then one thing I do think is the states are too busy. They need to really lay back on all the BS and start just managing the stuff that they're really supposed to be managing.
Right.
And
they aren't supposed to be managing our medical decisions. They aren't supposed to be managing, our family life. They aren't
food, our
supposed
education,
our food, our
the countless things they
education.
do.
Right. They don't want to get into that. Medical freedom. We should not have an institution that says we cannot eat, smoke, or drink the things that benefit us individually. We have that wisdom. We should have the freedom to utilize it in the way that makes us the best person we can be for our community, for our family, for our friends, for ourselves.
Yeah.
And as long as we're stuck waiting for a prescription from a doctor and whether or not they're going to accept our Medicaid or insurance before we can start getting healthy, start healing again, that's going to continue to be a problem.
That's one thing about our medical industry too. They just want to prescribe you a pill. It's very rare that you'll find a doctor that will tell you something holistic or something
So they make money.
basic.
Well, yeah.
Maybe you need to change this in your diet and you won't have this problem anymore. And, they're like, oh, here's a pill, and they get kickback from all that. And so there's benefits to prescribing constantly instead of giving people the right knowledge to manage their health.
So like one of the things early on in the AMA's history, that was Rockefeller, 1880s, 1890s, you started seeing the AMA come to dominance, and it was the men in the AMA that started pushing women out of medical, out of nursing. They were starting to diminish, the wisdom of the women folk. These are the herbs you need to drink for this. These are the herbs you need to drink for that. This is what needs to be sprinkled on your food in a certain amount. How you were using the seasoning, not just for flavor, but for health as well. We had a point where a lot of the issues that women were dealing with, menstrual pains, cramps, cannabis covered it.
Well, back then,
20 years later, they were giving them lobotomies.
Crazy stuff for everything.
Right.
Yeah. But cannabis was definitely a medicine in the Old West. Even.
Yeah.
You'll see old bottles with.
So it was mercurochrome.
Yeah.
Mercurochrome. Yeah. Okay, so not all of it was great, but
They had cocaine.
Yeah. Oh, the cocaine. Well, let's get back to that.
But how about you, Chad? You got any books?
Yeah, I just bought that Eaters of the Dead, Michael Crichton. It was $15.
Bro, I want to read that. I really do.
Yep. I've never read it, so I knew we were doing this, so I bought it the other day. It should be here soon.
Nice. Excellent.
Yeah, bring it to the next podcast. We'll show it.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to. No, I'm kidding.
Come on, we got to shout out Michael Crichton, man. That guy's a badass writer. He wrote all kinds of bangers.
It's true.
So, sports. June 14th, there's free fishing. Are you a fisherman?
No, I'm not a fisherman.
No?
I don't have time, place to store a rod, and be able to set up and go out and, put a worm on a hook.
Take a little bit of time. Yeah, there's a million hobbies out there. You don't have time for all of them,
right? Sometimes you barely have time for one.
But for anyone interested, if you don't have a license, 14th of June, you could go out and cast that line out, and then no one will bug you or give you a ticket for fishing. Right. What about the floating river? You done that?
I live in the Treasure Valley. Of course, I've done that.
All right. So that should be coming up pretty soon. I've been waiting.
Right, they got to wait for the water to warm up and the water level to go down.
Yeah, because they say
allegedly. Well, we got about 2-3 more weeks.
I'm waiting for it, man. It's gotten hot out there. I'm ready for some water, and
And I've gone down to the river a couple times now to soak my feet. It's beautiful. You catch it at the right time of day. You get down on the shore down by the river, temperature drops 5-10 degrees. It goes from a sultry, warm day to a nice, cool breeze right off the river. Yeah.
And for anyone who doesn't know, the Boise River float is huge. People go there by thousands every day, floating down this river, and like the most crazy stuff.
Well, okay. So the thing is, when we were when I was a kid, okay, this was shortly after the EPA took over the riverways, and we went in and we did the cleanup on the riverfront. Shut down the slaughterhouse that was upstream from Barber Park. Maybe Barber Park was the slaughterhouse. And cleaned up the rivers. And as soon as we cleaned up the river, it's like, cool. Now that it doesn't smell like blood and feces, it's nice waterfront property. And you started seeing the gentrification of that. And, you'd float down the river. These days it's reached a point where people are making a business out of doing river tours.
Yeah, quite lucrative. Renting rafts.
That's funny.
Renting rafts, selling rafts. Yeah. You got the tour guide, on the boats, and right over there.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, but Boise actually has a lot of history. It's
pretty,
yeah. They've had a lot of things go down here. One thing I heard was like Garden City was big into the female prostitution ring at one time, and like I don't know when it was just getting built, right? Because now we got Garden City literally in the middle, surrounded by Boise. It's the weirdest thing. We got this little Garden City, and all around it is Boise.
Yeah, it's
right?
the most beautiful part of Boise. Yeah. Everybody knows that. So if you're moving here, move to Garden City. Will love it.
I've never seen a town in the middle of a town,
But you have.
But now, yeah.
But you have.
But I have.
Chinatown in LA, San Francisco, Seattle.
I've been there. Yeah.
Right? It's a town within a town.
I didn't know that.
Okay,
was
because
actually
that was
originally. I thought it was just part of San Francisco. It was just
it's part of the town. But what it was a ghetto.
Nah.
It was zoned for specific things.
Hmm.
Okay, once we turned Boise into the capital of the state, there were certain things that the people who lived and worked in the capital still wanted to be able to do, but the mayor of Boise wasn't going to let happen.
Hmm.
Prostitution.
And gambling.
Gambling.
Yep.
Drinking. And it was also where the Chinese lived.
Yeah, so that place was probably really wild.
So it was segregated.
History, yeah.
So here you had Garden City where it was segregated. It was Chinese, immigrant workers that weren't white, as well as all of the vices that weren't actually allowed in proper Boise, which is why it took so long for it to overcome that. You're still looking at, the 19 and over bookstore, is the only bookstore of its kind, in the Treasure Valley,
Now
right?
Garden City's getting kind of bougie.
They're getting bougie. They're tearing it down. They're gentrifying Garden City
100%.
Because they got a river.
Well, they got river. They got a clean river,
Mm-hmm.
which they didn't have in the 70s.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, what do you got on the sports, Chad?
UFC 316 just happened.
Yeah, that's right. Did
Right.
you watch that?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah?
Dude. Yeah, I had to watch the second fight of Rabvashvili and Sugar Sean.
Sugar Sean.
Yep.
And Sugar Sean's so badass. I like
Yeah.
that guy.
Oh, he got to put it on him, dude.
Yeah?
Yeah. Marab whooped his ass.
Oh, shit.
Yep,
Marab's
twice.
a motherfucker.
And he's a construction
Marab's
worker.
a motherfucker.
Yeah. It doesn't surprise me, dude, because he's a little construction worker. Right? Short, little, stocky dude.
You would have a bias for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because you're looking at the two. The two go into the
Yeah.
fight, and here you got Sugar Shane. He's standing like 5 inches above Marab.
Mm.
Marab's the short, stocky looking wrestler dude. And they start going at each other. And but it's like the concession speech. You were listening to Sean, Molly go, Marab's a motherfucker. Marab's a motherfucker. That Marab, he's a motherfucker.
Yeah, Chad gets to watch more than I do, but we go to Buffalo Wild Wings every now and then, and they show up for free if you could get a table. It gets pretty packed on there on the UFC nights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the old UFC.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Front Street Fights here in Boise. They got number 32 coming up on July 11th.
Nice.
Yeah, I gotta get some tickets because I love.
Yeah, you know where we're sitting.
Fights. Yeah, we got our spots picked out. We've tried a few places and we know exactly where to go now.
There you go.
Yeah, good view, and the Idaho Central Arena is always really cool. Good place to go see shows like that.
Yeah, or hockey. It's great to see hockey there too, dude.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of.
Don't forget roller derby.
Roller derby, huh?
I think it's safe to say anything's fun to watch there.
Right. Yeah, it's a good arena.
It is a good arena.
So what about whitewater rafting? You ever done any whitewater rafting?
No, whitewater rafting is not my thing.
Oh man, we have some of the best here in Idaho.
Yeah, I know. Payette River, Snake River, most of them all got good rapids you can work on. And even the Boise River down here in Ann Morrison and Julia Davis, particularly Ann Morrison, catching off a lot of people down there practicing their river drills, just around the dams.
The water's super high right now, and
Yeah, wow.
it's crazy watching those people go down those
Right.
crazy rapids in those little bitty boats. So there's the little
Mhm.
kayaks, and if anyone has never seen a rapid river in like real life, there's just no way to explain it to you. They're intense. You look in there and you like, if I went in that water, I would die, 100%.
Mhm.
The realization would be like, you're not coming out of that alive, right? And so it takes some big cojones to be ripping.
Well, unless you're 21, slightly drunk, and believe you're immortal,
and there's a lot of those.
and then you think you can body surf that shit.
And so I went to a Comic-Con one time, and William Shatner was there, and he was telling a story about how he almost died filming a TV show here in Idaho, whitewater rafting. It was hilarious, and I was like, "Yeah, that tracks, right?"
Oh yeah,
like Idaho.
Yeah.
Let's get into music, dude.
Yeah.
Enough on sports. We've got the Acid Bath tour coming up in Seattle.
Oh,
We're gonna lose our singer for that.
oh, he's excited. That's like his favorite band in the universe, besides Gojira.
Yep.
Yeah, I would
Classic.
say that's probably like his number 2, or it's probably in his top 3. Yeah. What about you? You ever listen to any metal?
It's been a long time. The metal I used to listen to is these days you call it classic rock.
I listen to
Ronnie
all.
James Dio,
Yeah.
Black Sabbath,
That's metal.
AC/DC.
That's metal.
That's metal.
That's metal. What are you even talking about?
But it's not Norwegian death metal,
It
man.
doesn't matter. Metal's metal.
Yeah, we listen to all. Yeah, there's a billion subgenres now.
Yeah, that's not
Yeah.
important. That's
Oh,
not
right.
the relevant
The
part.
subgenre, Irish folk metal, listening
Yeah,
to them,
there's-
the electric fiddle,
Pirate metal.
pirate metal.
That's a thing. That's a real thing.
It's funny.
Viking
Disney
metal.
metal.
Viking metal is my fave.
Yeah.
All right.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and then you start seeing the cross genre stuff, like I Like Chocolate by Baby metal. Yeah, Japanese.
Oh, but no, I've seen.
Yeah.
I went and seen Corn, and had Baby Mill open for him, and I was like, it was weird. The funniest thing about that band, though, is the drummer looked like he was having an amazing time. The dude had this gigantic smile and was just drumming it up, having a great time. Yeah.
It's not a bad job to have, dude.
Dude, yeah, he was probably like, I can't believe I'm getting paid for this right now. Music, yeah. A friend of ours is playing a show Saturday, June 21st at the Mad Swede Brew Hall.
Nice.
It's with Switched Off Safety and our friends Divinium and Coma Throne. It's even though it's at a brew hall, it is an all ages show, and I think it was $15.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they call it a brew hall, but it's a restaurant with
Yep, and our buddy Cody is in
Catering spot.
Divinium, and we had him on a couple episodes, and we'll have him back, eventually too.
Nice.
See what else we got, Chad, on music.
Not much. Just about ready to get our jam spot permanently set up.
Yeah, we can't wait till I get our band back on track.
Yep, that'll be nice. Start recording again.
Mm-hmm.
Work on the stuff we want to work on for what we got coming out. That'll be nice.
Yeah, we got a ton of songs just ready to unleash. We're just looking for a drummer right now.
And a bass player, but allegedly we're going to meet someone.
We're meeting someone. Maybe they'll jump in on the bass, and it's hard finding band members that click.
Right.
The right fit for your band. It's a lot more challenging than you would think. I would say the hardest dynamic being in a band, this is the single most thing, is getting 4 dudes in one spot once a week. All right, that is it. Right, if you could do that, then you got a band. I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry. Chicks too. Okay, I'm sorry. Not just the dudes. Okay.
Right. No, I completely understand. When I was growing up, my dad was in a band. Idaho, the band,
Mm-hmm.
and they did an awful lot of Western covers.
Name's taken.
Right. Yeah. But it's like, they had the bar gig, they do the scene, but it's like getting the 4 people, 5 people necessary, the guy on keyboards, the guy on guitar, the guy on drums, your lead singer, and hopefully they're all actually capable of getting along together and
have a stable life.
A stable life. They're not narcissistic, screwing around and, nose to the mirror. 8 nights a week.
Nose to the screen.
or lips to the bottle,
or something. You know, you hear all sorts of stories. Yeah.
No, well, when you're dealing with band people, like it's a rough crowd, right? We've met some strange cats in the music world. Yeah.
Hey, and in the construction world, dude.
Bro, we tried to audition for a solo guitarist. So this is
lead guitar player, solo guitarist,
and this guy shows up and he brings his guitar and he's talking all confident. All right, we'll see what you got.
I believe the guitar wasn't tuned either.
I don't
I
think
believe
the
guitar
was.
wasn't
He
tuned.
starts like tapping it and doing like weird shit, and we're like, "What's going on here? Are we being pranked?
We're being punked."
Yeah, I thought we were being punked because it was so terrible. I was like, "This got to be a joke," but no.
No, but how did you sing that new style of playing the guitar?
He was like, I play piano, and so I play the guitar like a piano. This is literally what this guy said.
Oh, geez.
Oh, yeah. And so we were like,
he was dressed for the job he wanted.
Thank you. Have a nice day. not the one.
Right.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, there's some interesting styles of guitar out there. You know, first time I saw some of the variations, August Rush.
No, that's amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a new one that I'm seeing an awful lot of YouTube on reels on out of the UK. Ren. He does a lot of variations with the percussion on the guitar along with the classic guitar.
That's really really a weird style.
It's a skill.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a skill, most definitely.
Yeah.
So what is a band that really inspired you growing up, just throughout your life? Like,
one of those things, I got to go with Blue Oyster Cult. You know, just because Veteran of the Psychic Wars and the heavy metal was just struck. But it's like most of the bands were associated with the heavy metal soundtrack were just amazing.
I know what my favorite track on that one is.
Yeah.
It's the heavy metal by Don Fielder from the Eagles, because they had it on a cheesing episode on South Park. Man.
Hey, that's got a groovy bass
line.
Oh,
it is such a good jam, yeah.
But yeah, otherwise, Led Zeppelin, Ozzy, of course. Yeah, Blue Oyster Cult's definitely up there at the top.
Okay. Van Halen or Van Hagar?
Van Halen.
Good choice.
I like Sammy Hagar as a solo artist. I don't think he ever really meshed well with the Halen brothers. It just didn't quite have.
They made some pretty damn good jams, though.
They did.
That's besides the point.
We're not asking if they did. But it's one of those things. David Lee Roth wasn't great as a singer, but as a performer for Van Halen, he pulled it together. Panama.
David Lee Roth was amazing. He made so many bangers. Have you listened to his podcast on Joe Rogan?
No, I haven't.
The guy is literally fascinating. He is an amazing just person. He has all these like different skills and things that he's pursued in his life. So it was such a great podcast. I think I listened to at least twice.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't do that, honestly, to a lot of them. There's only one or two that I've listened to more than twice. And one here recently is the Robert Rodriguez and Joe Rogan.
That was a good one.
God, that's so inspiring.
Yeah, that was a great one.
But that's also because I want to get into filmmaking. And that guy had a lot to say on that subject. And it was very, very
nice.
On point and direct. And it spoke to me. Music. Don't have any shows I'm going to here.
Nope.
Except for Cypress Hill, and that's like in August. And I think Judas Priest and Alice Cooper are coming too. I'm gonna go see that. Yeah, together. Yeah.
That's a throwback,
dude. That's gonna be a cool show,
right?
Yeah. I would definitely want to go see that. Some of those old people, they got it. They still have. Well, they never lost it.
The thing is, they never stopped, and that's the key.
Mm-hmm.
This is a life they enjoy. It's something they enjoy doing. They live for it, and it keeps them young.
Yep.
It's not like they fell into some sort of mood and just drifted off into nowhere and got fat like Guns and
Maybe some of them did.
Well, some of them, but like Judas Priest,
They still rock.
Yeah. You know, you take a look at the Rolling Stones. I mean, they're the original. It's like, you know, they're still kicking. They're still touring.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
Let's get into video games, dude. What do you got for video games?
Well, I'm still been crushing on that Dead Souls game.
You haven't beat it? What are you doing with your time?
No, it is amazingly difficult. There's all kinds of like upgrades, and you have to get to these new areas and then find the upgrade, and then try not to die. You have to actually make it out of the place to get to keep the upgrade. And I keep on like getting the thing and getting freaking smoked before I get on out of there. It's a challenging game. And usually a game you play for a couple days and you beat it. This one I've been playing for weeks and not even near close. So
that's good. Those are the good ones.
This is a good one, right?
It's a keeper.
Yeah. Been extremely having a lot of fun on it. I actually spend too much time. It's a time suck. I get in there and I'm just like, oh, it's an hour or 2 hours. Oh no.
Right.
Put it down.
Right.
What about you, Joe? What do you've been playing any video games?
I really don't have much time for them.
Yeah, I thought so.
I got one that I play on a semi-regular basis. It's called EVE Online. You know, one of those space-based.
Love EVE Online.
Right?
No, okay.
You know, but it's like
Mercurial or what?
Gallant. You know,
railguns.
Yeah, I spend more time, you know, flying the Garista ship, the Gia, yeah, however they pronounce that. Mainly because I don't have time to really push and pursue, you know, some of the fleet actions and so on. You know, it's one of those, you get involved in a massive multi-playing, you know, world where you got thousands of people, you know, 10,000, 30,000 people be online at a time, where you can do fleet on fleet actions of 100 on 100, you know, and it's like, well, I don't have time to set up my schedule for when the fleet action for the corporation is going. So it's like I log in, I do my, you know, 45 minutes to an hour a day to get my dailies, you know, and then I got to log out because I'm back to work or I'm headed off to a campaign meet and greet.
You run alt accounts? Watch your back?
No, I
So
got it.
PvP.
No, I don't PvP.
Well, that's obvious if you don't run an alt.
Right. Well, that's what, of course, I'm also running on, you know, a 10-year-old laptop most of the time I play too.
I turn the graphics down. You'll be all right.
Yeah,
no,
turn the graphics down. But no, EVE Online is great because they actually got set up so you can multi-box. You can run 3 or 4 accounts on the same system.
As
long as you're paying for all of them. You know, you can't run a non-prime, you know, an unpaid account with your boxed, you know,
That's the Omega, not Alpha account.
Yeah, you got to be paying for all 6 of your accounts every month.
That's pretty easy to do, though. It's pretty easy, depending on what you're doing. Like if you're running a battleship, let's say, right? You have a decent battleship, like you said, your Galente. Say you have a Megathron Navy issue, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm running for my main.
Okay.
Run a Megathron Navy, and I run snub nose railguns. That way I just get right in there and smoke them, right? So
you're an up close brawler. Got it.
Well, I'm a quick brawler. I also have a Navy issue that is long range up to, I want to say it hits pretty well up to like 150K, but normally I just go out to 100.
So you got your sniper for when you're stepping back and running
I do them both.
long range.
I do PvP, so I run them both, right?
That's
both
right.
My accounts are at Tech 10, but yeah.
Your
love EVE Online.
Got it. Yeah.
Chad's always been into the player.
I love fighting other players. Yeah. That is my thing. PvP, any kind.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Was that StarCraft that you were trying to get me into?
I love StarCraft. Yeah, StarCraft is great PvP.
Tough. I got my ass.
Dude, there's a school for StarCraft. There's a school in Korea for that game where they teach you the math of it, where to go, what to do, what to play, you know, because it all plays out. There's only a few different things you could do in the beginning and branch out from, right? You're either going to use gas or you're just going to use minerals. So you decide, am I going to attack quick or am I going for the slow game? So there's a school about it for what your moves can be for the 3 different races you play.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's great.
Let's get on the motor. What you got?
No, I'm not done with video games.
What you got on video games?
Why are you messing my turn up?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about Resident Evil 9 coming out.
Oh, shit. Okay.
I'm looking forward to that. You like Resident Evil?
Wasn't one of my big ones because I see it as a first-person shooter. You know, more into the puzzle games.
Well, number 1 was third person and full of puzzles.
Yeah, number 1 was. Is you started moving more towards it. It started drifting more towards first-person shooter.
To pull your weapon at least.
Right.
Yeah.
great theme. I love the storyline, but at the end of the day, it's like, how long do I really want to get trapped in this, first person shooter where it's all about speed response rather than thought process? How are you designing your character? How are you building your character? It's one of the reasons why I like Diablo so much when, when it came out was, the character arc, you were able to build your type. There were certain builds that worked particularly well. So it's like you're looking at creating the build in order to facilitate, the end state. So it's a problem solve. How do you build the build, in order to accomplish the mission?
You play 3 or 4 at all?
4 was the one I did most of it with. I haven't touched it in a year. I think I played the Necromancer a couple of times.
I haven't played the newest one.
The Crusader. But the new one that they've just come out with that has expanded it as well as added the extra levels to it. It is a bit of a grind. So it gets repetitive. Yeah, you go through multiple times. Nightmare. You go through the first time, the second time, working your way up through the levels, get through it all 6 times. But, it's the same scenario. It does get a little bit interesting, though, when you're playing, the Nightmare, at God level, and all of a sudden it's like your special characters are all running, 7 different special attacks at the same time. It's like, whoa. But yeah.
Yep, dodge the ice, dodge the plasma. Don't get
dodge
caught.
the ice, the plasma, and the firestorm all at the same time. Yeah.
Great game. Love Diablo. I pretty much love every game from Blizzard. They put out all bangers.
Yeah, they really put into work. They do.
Yep. Now, the game I've been playing most recently with the kids is this Batman Arkham Asylum.
Oh, it's
on the MetaQuest.
So good.
Oh, dude, it's so great. That game is so much fun. That's a good puzzle game because it makes you think.
Yeah.
The kids have asked me multiple times, Dad, what do I do here, man? I can't figure it out.
They make it challenging.
Yeah, they do make it challenging. It's cool.
They did really good on the Batman games and the Spider-Man games. Like the first superhero games, I'd say those 2 are like the best.
Right, they are good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we call it on video games.
Yeah.
Get into motorsports.
Yeah, what do you got going on?
Yeah, what'd you do today on motorsports?
What did I do?
Yeah.
I drove my Jeep to the gas station to pick up coffee.
In 4x4?
Yeah, that's right.
Sounds about right.
Rev up that engine.
Good. It's good for it.
I got that Flowmaster exhaust on there, so sounds like I'm mobbing.
That's illegal here, sir.
No, it's perfectly legal here in Idaho. Suck it, Californians.
Yep.
No modified exhaust for you.
Yeah, you mean I can't modify my own car?
Yeah.
Strange.
Nope. Actually, some of the cars that you buy, they're like, it's illegal as soon as you buy it. Like,
same thing with the guns you buy, dude.
Right.
It's just illegal. Yeah. Well, I did an alternator change in the wife's car. That was fun.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's a Lexus. Lexus makes everything easy, dude. It's not silly like Nissan, Honda, Mitsubishi, who all 3 just joined forces to become the 3rd largest automaker, which was strange. They're teaming up.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, they'll never beat Lexus.
Local hero. So I was, for a while, I was taking jiu-jitsu down here in Meridian.
Okay,
at the Gracie Baja Jiu-Jitsu School.
Nice.
And I only made it to like one stripe white belt. Okay, so I didn't make it very far before I got a new job, and it just took too much time. Me to get back into it. But while I was there, amazing teacher, Beto Fatal. He's from Brazil. Him and his wife are teachers there.
Nice.
And their school is amazing. And I've taken numerous martial arts all my life. And jiu-jitsu is by far one of the funnest and one of the hardest that I've taken.
Yeah.
The structure that they got is amazing. The way they teach is really good. They have it down. If you ever want to take a martial art about defense, and I highly recommend it for women. Okay.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it. Out of all the martial arts, if you're a woman, jiu-jitsu. Okay.
I mean, my personal recommendation is your Second Amendment, but as far as physical contact, it teaches a lot of good things that it can incorporate, firearms as well.
Well, that depends on you getting the firearm out and operating the firearm efficiently. So that's also a martial art.
Right.
It
is.
It is a martial art.
And being able to understand the grappling mechanisms that they teach in the Gracie Bara, absolutely. Seriously, the stranger danger concept, more often than not, assaults are coming from somebody they know, which means they're already inside the striking zone.
Yeah.
You know, which Second Amendment, I love the idea. I want to be able to see the defense in a multitude of situations. But let's be real. You need to be able to counter an attack and carry through on it in close quarters because they're already on you before you know they have bad intent.
Mm-hmm. And it's usually just a physical thing, being physically overpowered.
Yeah.
And knowing there's teachers that can show you, and in not too much, in months' time, you will be like 50% more capable of defending yourself. It's just
more of a honed weapon.
Just a couple months training will change your life.
Oh, yeah.
And so Gracie Baja Jiu-Jitsu, there's more than that. There's lots of Jiu-Jitsu schools, but I went to this school and I found it as a person who's been to multiple martial arts schools through my life, excellent.
Good.
100% recommend it.
Yeah.
And so I hope someone listens to this and wants to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the local business, dude.
No, wait.
Wait, he said.
No.
For you, do you have a local hero that you would like to shout out?
I guess we'd give that opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. Now, a lot of it with my local heroes is the activists on the day-to-day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the ones who actually put their name on the line when it comes to issues. You know, my favorite probably has to be the woman I work with, Jackie Winters.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she puts in the work. She's been putting in the work for 6 years trying to get cannabis legalized, you know, because not only is she working through her own post-traumatic stress injuries, you know, trauma, bad relationships, you know, she's working through it because, you know, she's got a daughter with brain cancer. She's been able to use cannabis in order to put into remission. You know, she's one of those activists who actually lives hard for what it is she believes in. You know,
that's important.
Yeah.
I see
important to be
authentic.
authentic.
Yeah.
One of those who actually breaks the unjust laws that we're in the process of trying to change. You know, she does what she needs to do for family, but she's also going the extra mile because she wants to make sure that that care can continue even when the care will only be provided by people who follow the letter of the law.
Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah.
Jackie
Winters. I got to go with Jackie Winters.
All right. Thank you, Jackie Winters. We appreciate your hard work. So now local business.
Yep, get into it.
All right. Oh, how about you? Let's let you start this one off. There's a local business that you like to partake. It doesn't matter if it's a coffee shop,
restaurant,
or
anything.
restaurant.
Yeah.
Any local business.
I really got a couple that, you know, I really get into. You know, Boise Co-op's a big one.
Great place.
Yeah.
Yep.
Locally owned, locally managed.
Great
you know,
food.
Great food.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they got their own deli, their own restaurant in there. You can pick stuff up, go back and, you know, eat it in their little dining area. And they got two of them open, the one out on Eagle as well as the one downtown. You know, I remember riding my bike all the way downtown when I was a kid, you know, in order to get special things that you can only get at the co-op.
Yeah, the co-ops are good about having a lot of those hard to find items.
And, you know, it's healthy, it's organic, you know, you can always count on it being reliable, healthy food.
Yeah, my wife shops there a lot.
Yeah. Other than that, you know, my next one probably got to go with one of my more favorite local restaurants, Quinn's.
Quinn's, huh?
Love that place.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Quinn's
I
is great.
haven't been there. Tell me about it.
Well, it's kind of an Irish American, you know. They
Yes, it is.
got an awful lot of, well, corned beef and cabbage.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
They got
if you're
full
going to Irish
Yeah.
American, you got to have corned beef and cabbage.
Nice.
But you know, they got good American cuisine as well. You got your Philly cheesesteak, steaks, deep fried mushrooms.
Oh, those are great.
Yeah, the deep fried mushrooms definitely go to. I mean, yeah, and Quinn's and the Co-op are my big ones.
I love a good stuffed mushroom or a deep fried mushroom. You know, yeah, yummy. Yep. So cool, Quinn's. I'm gonna have to try that out because I love restaurants. I go to a restaurant at least once a week. One of my favorites is the not Texas Roadhouse, the Longhorn Steakhouse.
Okay.
Over by the Cabela's, and oh my god, every time we go there, we have like the outlaw ribeye and mashed potatoes, and it's perfect. They've never messed up a steak. It's perfectly seasoned.
Well, I mean, you got other great ones. We got Lock, Stock, and Barrel.
Mm.
You know, it's a local one. You know, good food. You know, and this is one of those things not too many people who come to Idaho really understand. But we've been a center for refugee relocation since the 70s.
Mm.
You know, Thai boat people coming in. We brought in emergency refugees from Afghanistan, Iraq, Ukraine. You know, a lot of these times people come in with enough money that they set up their own, you know, local restaurant because they're serving, you know, their fellow refugees. You know, so you can go in and you can get, you know, Mediterranean food. I mean, real Iraqi, real Egyptian, you know, Somali food. You know, whether it's the snack, whether it's the full meals. You know, you can get an extreme range of heritage cuisines from around the world. You know, you just take a little time to look.
No, yeah, I've seen the little ethnic, I don't know what do you call them, but the shops there specifically for this or that culture.
Yeah.
And I think that's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot in Canyon County.
Yeah.
We just had a new Mediterranean Greek food place go in.
Nice.
Zuli's what it's called. It's pretty decent. Not bad and good prices.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a ton of that in Canyon County.
We have a lot
Yeah.
of
You think
Bass, big Bass community here.
That's
Street.
downtown Boise.
Bass
That's
Street is
downtown
super
Boise.
young.
Yeah, it's been a mainstay for downtown Boise.
Mm.
You know, the Bardenay and
That was
Yeah.
fun working there. I liked working at the Bardenay.
But for local business, me and Chad want to talk about 8-Bit Gaming over here in Meridian. Video game store, retro video games.
They
Right.
fix stuff.
They fix all your video game stuff. They have a full workshop. They can replace it, fix it, clean it. They have, I guess I was reading today, they have like 3D things in back with the actual foot where you actually run in 3D and you actually using your legs.
VR setup.
Yeah,
the
VR.
full VR setup.
Nice.
I want to try that out because I've
Yeah,
only
that's
seen
cool.
videos and that looks amazing, right? Yeah, so they have that stuff there.
Yeah, new and vintage.
And I was just there the
Yeah.
other day, and they have a copy of Castlevania 4 for
Nice.
Super Nintendo
Uh-huh.
in the box. Probably even has the instructions in it. It looked beautiful. And I was like, oh, it was a couple $100. So I was like, I
Right.
can't afford that right now.
Yep.
But yeah, if someone listening to this, there's Castlevania 4 sitting down there at 8-Bit Gaming right now, waiting for that collector. All right, that's one of the two Metroidvania games that was like they defined that genre.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
So 8-Bit Gaming, love it. And if anyone likes retro video games, that's a stop for you. Mm-hmm. All right, so that's it for our local business. On to world events.
World
Woohoo.
events.
Yeah, this is kind of a heavy topic right now. What do you got on the world events, Chad?
I talked about it a little bit. The Honda, Nissan, Mitsubishi merger.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of strange to see. It's really strange to see the cooperation from those huge companies, but I think they know that, you know, before us, something's going to fucking happen or go down.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
these things make a lot more sense to them when they have knowledge of future events. So I'd assume something's going to happen in the car industry here very fucking soon
Well,
due to that fact alone.
Trump's making a lot of moves with his tariffs and trying to bring business back
Precisely,
to
yep.
the United States. So
Right.
Manufacturing.
yeah,
Not just business.
Well,
They're
it's
trying to bring
manufacturing.
manufacturing
Yeah.
back to America,
And
where we
jobs.
are the number one creator of metals and products.
which I 100% agree with. We need to be producers. You
Yeah,
know,
correct.
We can't
Yeah.
just be consumers. We have
Everybody
to be
knows
producers
that.
too.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we gave up in the 70s. You know, when Nixon came in, we went to fiat currency. We moved into China's established trade partner. We started pumping up the regs, so it was expensive to do business here in the U.S. in a number of industries. EPA came in,
gonna say,
killed
yeah,
our
all
mining
the-
industry.
Yep, all the
You know,
red tape.
right? All the
Yep.
red tape. Thank you, Bunker Hill, for poisoning an entire community. You know, but EPA set us back, made it expensive to do business. It was cheaper to go other places because other places didn't mind screwing up their environment.
Yep.
You know, we got places where we send our garbage right now that are still toxic because of the chemicals they use. Stuff we wouldn't be ever allowed to use here in the U.S. But thing is we have the technology in order to do it clean now.
Yeah.
We don't, because regulations still make it expensive. But we are doing much better as far as the technology goes for ethical extraction, mining materials, especially with what's coming up, the rare earth mineral mine that they're opening up, not just up in Salmon Forest area, but
No, really.
trying
Because we need
Caldwell mine.
more of those. That's one thing China has over
Right.
us, is they have a lot of rights to
Well,
those rare earth
the thing
minerals.
is China doesn't have more than we do. It's just that we weren't extracting it because we didn't know what it meant to technology when we shut down the mines where we could extract it.
Yeah, because we have a ton here.
Right, we have a ton.
No, so we have the resources. We just,
here alone
Oh yeah,
in Idaho.
here alone in Idaho, we have an amazing number of resources. If we start taking a look at the different kind of technologies, we have uranium mines as well, quartz. We got nickel, cadmium, the thorium is one of those rare earth minerals that we have here, which is actually nuclear capable. Chinese are currently doing the studies on that. Cadillac came out with a thorium Cadillac prototype.
Interesting.
We got gold, we got silver.
Silver.
I know we have a lot of heavy minerals like that,
and that's electronics right there.
Yeah.
The antimonium,
thin gold.
With the chip factory we got out here with Micron, the supply chain doesn't even have to leave the state.
No, they're building more too.
Right, and they're building
bigger.
more.
Yeah.
So we can literally pull it out of the mountains, ship it down to a smelter down by the airport, and then turn around, drop it off the front step of Micron. Continuity right there. We're able to reduce the carbon footprint of the stuff we make because we're not shipping it all over the world.
Right.
Yep.
We pull it out of the mountain and go straight into manufacturing, straight into product. We can do high tech, servers, laptops, phones.
Oh, we do chips here.
Yeah,
well, we used to.
We used to. We're going back to doing
One
chips.
thing we also need to do is embrace nuclear technology. Smaller size nuclear plants, not these massive ones, but ones that
on
are
East Idaho.
big enough
IF has it.
to help our power grid, but not be completely dependent off of one source of power.
So this is one of those things we look at. And Idaho Power has been killing us on this. Okay, because Idaho Power wants these monolithic, structures. They want the big solar farms. They want the big air farms. They want us to blow the dams on our hydropower that has given us the cheapest power in the United States for the last 70 frigging years.
And we have a ton of hydropower.
And we still have hydropower.
Yeah, we have a ton of them.
We have a ton. Even with the ones that they're blowing, we are still one of the states with the most highest percentage of hydropower for our power usage.
Well, we have more miles of river in Idaho than the entirety of the United States.
Yeah.
And here in Idaho.
Exactly. The rivers. And the thing is we're looking at Idaho Power is creating this monolithic structure. Everybody's got to go through Idaho Power. And we're seeing them affect, micro producers on solar level. Okay. You can't put solar unless you're paying your fees to Idaho Power, just to be tied into the grid. If you're doing any sort of micro production on through your home for power, you want to throw a little hydro pump in your ditch, so that you can generate a little bit of electricity off of that. You still got to tie it into the grid. You got to pay your fees to Idaho Power. It comes down to the other things, like you were talking about, community level nuclear plant capability.
Yep.
Be able to small scale, nuclear capable, run a thorium battery, power up a square mile. And you got a distributed architecture. You no longer have the weakness of these monoliths. You no longer have the weakness of the hydro farm. You no longer have the weakness of the solar farm. You no longer have the weakness of, the big dam, or the transformers, because every community is tied together yet self-sufficient.
And most people, when they think nuclear power, they're worried about like nuclear waste, because
Right.
that's like a big movie thing. Nuclear
I
waste.
think
Yeah.
they're more worried about like a Fukushima situation
But
where it's fucking uncontrolled and ruining the area
but it is
ruining
still
the ocean.
the cleanest power that we can produce
until there's a mistake
Yeah, and a lot of the mistakes have been on these really old power plants that were
or natural disasters.
natural disasters.
Natural disasters were a big one. But again, that's the reason for going small scale. You're able to do the containment in a way in such that it's controlled. When you start building monolithic structures, there's natural weaknesses simply because the scale creates weakness in and of itself.
Oh, we see it every day with our
Yeah.
power outages here,
Yeah.
with our lines down, with our system out because it needs new infrastructure due to more people moving here.
Right?
Constantly we see
So
it.
Well, the number of times we've tried to burn down Boise
Oh,
because
yeah. Just
power
happened.
lines aren't
It
maintained.
just happened.
Right? Last summer.
Yep.
Yeah, the whole-
No, there was a fire yesterday. Was it? I
Whoa.
think it was yesterday. I think it was a down power line that they found out it was down power
Right.
line. Yep.
But yeah, the whole United States really needs to start switching over to some more nuclear energy.
Smarter energy. At
We
least.
should have been
Well,
doing
smarter
it
energy.
a long time ago.
It doesn't matter if it's
Yeah.
nuclear.
Well,
it doesn't matter what the fuck it is.
Some
It
people
matters
think
smarter.
these wind farms are smart energy.
No, they're
but
not.
No, they're
really-
not.
Ugly
They're
and dumb.
detrimental
They're
to
ugly.
the environment. They're
Yeah.
ugly, and so
And the reason why we got so many is because it's a carbon tax write-off for the big industry. It's a subsidized program that actually provides no actual value, but it sounds good on paper. Meanwhile, you're tearing up the environment, you're disrupting the ground soil, everything you can do about going through and creating a reforestation of the area gets destroyed because you're turning everything upside down.
and these solar farms, like those panels, don't last more than a few years. They have to be replaced constantly.
Well, the panels, a lot of them that are coming out 20 years. But
Mhm.
one of the things when you're looking at solar farms,
Mm.
the large scale, what you're doing is you're creating a heat sink.
Mm.
Okay. The heat islanding of a solar farm will raise the ambient temperature in the area of that anywhere from 5 to 10 degrees.
Just like pouring blacktop downtown
Right.
Boise.
And that's what it is. You're taking this pristine, desert area. Yeah, it's maybe a little more arid. You don't think it's producing, but it still has moisture. There's enough plant life that it disrupts the rays so they're not bouncing straight back up. And you put all this flat black
And it just
for 1,000 acres.
kills everything there.
It kills everything. Ambient temperature goes up 10 degrees. You're bouncing those rays off of the earth and they're shooting straight up into the sky. You're seeing disruptions in the biosphere because now your weather patterns change because the troposphere is being pushed out from the heat that's being generated by that heat island.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
You're losing moisture, you're changing the rainfall patterns. And next thing you know, the entire western United States is truly desertified.
Mhm.
Not just it's a little dry. It's like no rainfall. Yeah.
So
No, we need to get back to micro production.
It sounds great in theory, but
Right.
in mass production, it's
Oh, it
not
sounded
good.
great. Talking economy of scale.
Well, they want
Make
to do
it
it on
bigger,
a,
make it better.
they want to
No.
put them all on a roofs, which is going to do the same thing.
But the difference is you already got black on your roof.
That is true.
Yep.
Okay.
And on your
So all
roads,
you're doing is taking one heat attraction, those shingles, and replacing it with another. So the overall effect is reduced. In addition to that, because they're scattered, you have the lawns in between
entries.
your entries.
Yep.
You're seeing the back and forth. You got the green space associated with it. What you do on the roofs, what you do in urban areas, is not nearly as damaging as when you take a pristine biome out in the wilderness and replace it with blacktop.
That makes sense.
The other
Yeah.
thing that we can do is the carports. You already got acres of asphalt for parking.
Right.
Go ahead and throw up a couple towers.
It's a way to generate money.
Yeah.
As well as parking, right? It's like a double.
Well,
you pay parking and plus
Right.
you're making money off.
Well,
the
it's
electricity.
not just that.
You're farming.
But I mean, you drive into the mall, you got all these acres of blacktop that are now solar generating.
Mhm.
You're parking in the shade because you're underneath the solar panels,
Which everyone wants to park in the shade.
right?
Yeah.
And in addition to that, that solar panel is providing you shade even though it's a little warmer but not much, just because you're already parking on blacktop. Okay, you now have an EV charger that's tied to those solar panels. You can plug in your electric car and charge it while you're in doing your shopping. And you're killing 3 birds with 1 stone when you put solar panels over asphalt parking lots for our strip malls.
Now, this whole California dream of all electric cars could be realized if they were a fully nuclear powered, because that's the only way you're going to supply that much power to a
right, and that's really what it is.
Amount of people.
Electric cars are a nice novelty as long as not everybody has one. The second you start looking at electric powered, right, and they've talked about this supply chain issue before in board meetings. I want a fleet of electric powered forklifts. Well, forklifts require more power than your average system, so you're going to have a bigger battery. The battery is going to require more to charge. How much power can you generate in order to make sure that your fleet of EVs are powered versus sticking a propane tank on the back of one of your forklifts?
Yeah, it's not practical.
No,
not yet, at least. They haven't come up. The technology isn't there.
Well, they haven't come up with the right battery to be able to transfer and store in a timely manner.
All right, so California riots, 5 days in, craziness. Like these, I don't know what to think. Quite honestly, about it. Are these actual people that are angry, or is this some kind of I'm kind of a believer in not everything is just some random convergence of people getting angry. Some of these things are set off. Maybe it's benefiting the cartels to have all this chaos, because now their drug supplies have megally
not only
diminished.
their drug supplies, but their clients as well.
Yeah.
The entire system's being disrupted. ICE went into Targets, Home Depots, these major places where you have communities. You're looking at LA. It's mixed heritage communities. You got Black over in Oakland, you got Latino in LA proper. Property values and a lot of that have gone way up. Costs of living way up. You're seeing land grabs in order to cover costs in certain areas. LA burns every 5 years minimum. LA burned Santa Ana's last summer. They took out 3 or 4 or 5 neighborhoods. Significant communities that are now being repurposed now that the original buildings have been burned down. They don't have to pay for demolition, so what was mansions now turns into low-cost multi-tenant housing. People who,
which we're seeing a lot of that around here.
Which we're seeing a lot of that around here too. We're seeing high density. Well, Boise is still medium density. Because you're only looking at 3-4 story, buildings. It's still a medium density. You're not putting,
Boise is not where the meat of the building is.
No.
Outskirts,
but
past Meridian into Nampa.
Yeah, you're looking at the suburbs.
Yep.
You're pushing the suburbs further out. The money's going further out. Low income's moving into the center. Now, what you're running into the problem with LA is, they're pushing the poor out into the suburbs, and they're trying to build up and gentrify the center area for all of the business people. So you're looking at business centers in LA. So you're looking at land grabs because you're not putting in low income multifamily dwellings. You're putting in high end lofts for business people. You're looking at traders, real estate agents, the people who are involved in insurance, bankers, these people who are looking at, $200K a year, whereas you're looking right now, the areas where most of the riots in LA are happening are near the ICE detention facility. Okay, the ICE detention facility happens to be in a pocket where it's largely federally owned. There's a lot of federal property in close proximity to where the riots are happening right now that has been marked for sale.
Yep.
Okay, so you're looking at massive redevelopment. Now, one of the things that we looked at from BLM, BLM 5 years ago, went on George Floyd riots. You saw demonstrations across the United States. Okay, there were approximately only 8 or so that actually turned into full-scale riots where you lost communities to arson and fire. In every one of those communities where that were lost to that, gentrification happened. They came in, it was cheap to rebuild, knock everything down, throw new stuff up. You saw gentrification, property values in that key area went up. The poor people that were there are now gone, and you saw the wealth in that particular zone go up. That happened in 8 or 9 of the areas, of like 11, where there was arson involved in the demonstrations and the riots.
Oh yeah.
So LA riot right now, it's nothing more than another one of the land grabs for the major cities. The mayor's going to get rich off of this. The developers are going to get rich off of this. The LAPD are going to get brand new freaking cars for everyone that got burned. They're going to be happy as clams.
Yeah.
This isn't the taboo thing that everybody wants to make it out to be.
I know that there's probably definitely some things going on with the ICE that's probably not cool.
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely not.
They're probably being like a bit overzealous.
Well, they've reached a point right now where they're involved in malicious compliance. And how much of that is because suggestions came from key areas that things need to happen in order to facilitate gentrification in certain communities.
Yeah.
This is one of the things with every repatriation raid, that happened in the past 150 years. You saw the repatriation raids in the 1930s, 1850s, Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That was a displacement when you created Times Square or Central Park in New York. That was a displacement of a non-white population.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of these is a land grab.
Well, the whole 2020 thing, it was a big land grab.
There's
been a lot of that going on right now.
Oh, yeah.
Now, in this time in history, the land grab, driving people out of their homes, regentrification, that's like really happening.
Legitimate,
right this second.
And it just goes to show the level of corruption in our city and state governments because we've allowed the bureaucracy to take over and decide the fate of people. Unelected bureaucrats are deciding the fate of the people in the community because they're able to dictate what gets burned, where, when, why, and how.
If you follow the laws.
Well, thing is if the fire department decides to be slow in responding to a given community, if the police department practices their Keynesian economics with, the whole broken window theory, of crime, punishment, whether or not you're going to put more cops in there or take cops out in order to make certain things happen that shouldn't be happening in an equal justice society. So LA, it burns every 5 years. Every 10.
I'm interested to see how crazy this is going to get.
Now, one of the things they want to do is they want to correlate to the No Kings, rallies that are happening across the United States. Some 200 plus rallies in major cities. We're having like 3 here in Idaho, one in Idaho Falls, one up in Coeur d'Alene. Capitol's going to be down here on the 14th, all on Flag Day. One of those things that's ironic because it's No Kings Day, which is good. We don't want kings here in the United States. We wrote a constitution to keep the kings out.
Yeah.
So it sounds good on paper, but it comes down to where it's just an anti-Trump rally.
Yeah.
And I get that. But it's like you're also looking at 2 different types of organizations that put this together. Indivisible was the one who put together the No Kings and Restore Our Constitution rallies. And you're looking at Code Pink and Answer that are working with the unions down in LA. So you're looking at 2 different thought processes between the 2 different actions. And right now, the right's looking, well, No Kings is in relate. Well, they've been doing the No Kings for 3 months now. Restore Our Constitution. Really 3 months.
And crying and whining about everything that's been going on. I've been watching the mainstream news with a grain of salt. Trust me. You can't take.
You mean you don't believe it all?
Oh,
strange. You mean you're not brainwashed?
Do you believe any of it?
Can you name one news source that's trusted?
Joe Rogan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. I will stick with my fucking story. Joe Rogan. I trust him more than I trust CNN.
All right. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to concede that Joe Rogan is
you can try to poke holes in my story.
Trusted news source on earth. All the legacy media cannot handle this one guy.
Yeah, let's go, Bob Lazar.
It's crazy.
But again, it's back to the long form conversation. You're listening to him. I mean, he doesn't do an interrogation.
No.
But it's a long form conversation.
Mm-hmm.
People talk. People say what's on their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they say more than what they're supposed to.
That's their fault.
Well, it is their fault. They should have been better prepared. They should have understood that this is a no-go area.
All right, so let's see. Gulf of America, like it or not?
Gulf's a Gulf. It is the Gulf of the Americas, North and South America.
Hmm.
You know, probably should have been the name since the get-go.
Hmm.
You know, we rename features all the time. You know, we've gone in, right now we're in the process of renaming birds, simply because, you know, the bird watcher who made the original name was a slaver or a Nazi, or, you know, it's like, we can't call it the Cooper's Hawk because, you know, that was the name of a doctor who, you know, collected the teeth of black men.
Why is marijuana still illegal if
changing
that's
the name of the
case?
military
Come
bases, you know?
That was a silly choice.
Camp Liberty, you know, Fort Liberty, you know, now it's back to Fort Bragg. Except it's not named after General Bragg. It's now named after Private Bragg, who is a Medal of Honor winner.
Oh, that's funny.
What happened at Bragg?
Except it's there today.
Oh, yeah. Except.
Mm.
Yeah. He's rough and tumble, and I understand why an awful lot of people really like him, you know, especially when it comes to young men who are looking to prove themselves as men.
Mm.
You know, one of the reasons so many of us go into the military, you know, it's like this is an opportunity, you know, be a man, not the man, you know, you were in high school, but this is your man's man. You're going out, you know, to protect our Constitution, to defend. It's all lies. But, you know, when you're 18, you don't know that. You know, but Hegseth is creating this opportunity.
War is a racket.
Right. War is a racket. Smedley Butler. Absolutely. You know, but it's like Hegseth is coming in and saying, we're not going to be doing those stupid things. We are not mercenaries for the corporations. When we send American men and women into combat, it will be for the right reasons. We will send Marines into LA, you know, in order to ensure peace and security for the people in LA. You know, we're going to put the National Guard on the border to close the fence, so that criminal elements, you know, aren't doing human trafficking and drug trafficking across the border.
It just seems like such an easy thing to want. Like, let's not let.
Yeah.
I don't know why anyone has issues with the border.
Oh, yes, you do.
Yeah. Being
well,
yes, you do.
Ultimately, we do, because it's freedom of movement. You know, if you believe in liberty, you believe in freedom of movement.
Yeah.
You know, people come to the United States because they want to make a better life for themselves. They want to be able to come into the country. They want to be able to work. They still have family in these other countries. They want to be able to send some of their earnings back to make sure their families are taken care of.
We can't have ghosts in the country.
Right. We can't have ghosts. And right now, human trafficking in the United States is big business.
I don't even understand how that works. Like, where are these places that they're trafficking these humans? Like, where are they being trafficked to?
They're being trafficked into the designer district in LA. They're going into the sweatshops. They're going into farms that are run through employment agencies, that are run through third parties, that are fly by night, that disappear, you know, as soon as the ICE raid comes in and saves, you know, their employer, you know, 3 weeks worth of pay, because they don't have to pay all the illegal aliens that just got deported.
It trips me out that we still have things like this going on in this day and age, you know, and here in America. Like,
and if you listen to the horror stories about what happens to some of the young girls that try and come across with their families, you know, not just the labor trafficking, but you're looking at, you know, sex trafficking, and not just but minor sex trafficking.
No, which is like the most evil thing on earth.
It is
heinous.
Most heinous. But the thing is an open borders solves that, because it takes away the business of the coyotes. It takes away the business of human trafficking from the cartels, because people can go to an entry point and get entry.
Yeah.
Just give me a thumbprint, tell me your name, give me 5 minutes to run and check just to make sure you're not a murderer down in Mexico or San Paulo.
Yeah, which seems reasonable, right?
Right.
So very unreasonable policies being exercised on our
And
border
the
for many
addition
years.
is they come across, they get their own work visa. They get their own numbers to work. They're not stealing Social Security numbers. You know, they're not stealing identities in order to get employment. They come across, they pay their own taxes.
And they could still send their money back to
And
their
they can
families,
still send their
right?
money back.
But they're doing it.
But they're doing it in
illegally.
their name,
Yeah.
under their numbers, with their bank account,
Mm-hmm.
rather than stealing your identity in order to do it.
So,
and in addition to that, now the employer has to recognize them as an equal employee, so they're getting paid a fair wage.
a lot of places pay people under the table.
They do.
I don't think people believe that, but that's still a big
They
thing,
do.
right? You know, they're evading they're paying their taxes and paying health insurance and all these different
Mhm.
things that
Dude, you need a side gig to get by in this economy.
Yeah.
Or a 2-income household.
Or sometimes even the 2-income household needs a side gig.
Right.
You know, at least one of them's got to put in time in a third job in order to cover, you start trading favors with a neighbor, you know.
That's where these hobbies come in handy.
Right? Your hobby, your ability to fix a bike, fix a lawnmower.
How about Canada as a state? What do you think about Canada as a state?
Canada is state 51. This is one of those interesting because I'm a big fan of the apocalypse scenarios. You know, Greater Idaho has been a big thing for a while now. You know, it's not going to go anywhere because it's a bait and switch. You know, the Greater Theocratic Republic of Idaho is never going to happen. You know, simply because it won't be Christian, it won't be a republic, and it won't be Idaho after everything's said and done. You start looking at the apocalypse scenario, and it's like, well, what would a post-Constitution United States look like?
Like the Postman.
Right, like the post.
Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner and the
Thunderdome.
Thunderdome. But here you are, you're looking at the areas, that can be easily defended. The Greater Confederation of the City-States of Cascadia. Just set up a chain of city-states to defend the Rocky Mountains from all invaders. But
and these Idahoans would do it too. Like if shit went down, these guys up here would survive. They would band together.
Go back to the old.
Putting that out there.
Go back to the old Highlanders of Scott Highlander versus Lowlander scenario. But Canada is the 51st state. Each one of those land masses up there is big enough. Now, true, Canada as a whole probably doesn't have the population of our 6th largest state. But you still have landmass, you still have resources. Just the Canadian Rockies that go up between, that's resource rich. We've already, the Yukon, we've talked about gold, silver, precious metals, rare earth minerals, everything that we got in the Rockies here in the state of Idaho, they're in the Rockies all the way up. You're looking at antimony, thorium, uranium. All of these exist in what is currently considered pristine wilderness that won't either be touched by the Commonwealth or touched by the United States because it falls under current protections of the EPA.
Same reason we can't have geothermal. And I love geothermal.
Oh, geez. Warm Springs, they had it made when they, were able to set that up. The fact that we've actually been able to take that geothermal and pipe it into some of the other buildings downtown, huge boon for
Capitol Building uses it, doesn't it?
I
think Capitol Building uses geothermal.
No, the Capitol Building doesn't actually use geothermal. The Capitol Building was originally designed out of sandstone with tubes, and it was an underground, overground structure, and they had the architecture had natural ducts.
Oh yeah, those are cool.
Right, yep. That would work so that the heat would cause airflow to go down into the basement where it'd cool itself, and it'd bring the cooling feature back up to heat up in the dome. So you had this natural air circulation that kept the entire Capitol roughly the same temperature.
Oh, super interesting.
Yeah. And then they refurbished the Capitol and they closed all those ducts because it was going to save on costs. And the cost of heating and cooling the place quadrupled because the designer didn't understand how they were fucking the system up. Because it's one of those things, the skills and knowledges that were lost, and it's like some new engineer thought they knew something that, the original designers didn't. And turns out the original designers knew their shit and they weren't tied to this technological requirement of central air because it was designed into the architecture.
What about you, Chad? You got anything for world events?
I already told mine.
Yeah.
Stupid world events.
Yeah, that's a big one. On the vinyl then.
Yeah, let's get on to vinyl.
All right, so
nice.
We got some Tom Petty on the Heartbreakers over here.
No, I did not approve of this.
Yeah.
I want everybody
Chad,
to know.
Not a big fan, but I like Tom Petty.
Yeah, everybody likes Tom Petty.
He was here not too long before he died.
Right.
And I missed out on a concert, and it really makes me feel bad because, man, I was like, I should go see Tom Petty, and I didn't. And, I was like, oh, I missed my last chance. Dude was an amazing musician.
Well, yeah. Appropriate, because Last Dance with Mary Jane. Gotta love it as a song. Right. Yeah. I mean, overall, his role in The Postman, man, you're famous.
That's right.
No, you are.
You are. That was such a good part for him. Yeah, what a cameo. But yeah, amazing musician here. And also I got over here another amazing musician.
Yes.
All right, Prince. I got this 45 vinyl just the other day. It's all
wow.
Purple, Purple Rain. But the reason I have these two vinyls out, because both of these guys were taken out by the same thing. And it's unfortunately, and we really need to talk about the problem of that fentanyl is caused in our country.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate. I mean, hard drugs are dangerous enough, right?
Absolutely.
Without them being poisoned, literally poisoned, intentionally, and being brought into our country for nefarious reasons, only just to kill Americans. It's sort of the only reason.
I mean, there is no reason to put fentanyl in anything because fentanyl is more expensive than most of the drugs that are being cut with it.
Now, it is good.
So there's only
good medicine.
Yeah.
It does help.
Great. Under prescription, under controlled quality control.
Exactly. But what the drug cartels have done, and I don't know why they've done it. Maybe they were fooled into buying shit as well from the Chinese government. Because why would you screw up your cash supply and poison all your product? But yeah, fentanyl is taken more than just a couple of legends from us. It's a real problem, and I'm glad Trump is doing something actively to combat it right now.
Right. He's trying to control access and flow at the borders. We've already seen positive effects from that in Texas.
He's also classified these drug cartels as actual terrorist organizations, which is a big thing.
Yeah. He's classified them as enemy combatants. Which allows the military to go after them specifically. And he's also talked to the DEA and the FDA about harm reduction measures, getting certain drugs that work particularly well for withdrawal and addiction, back into the use in medical programs and recovery programs. We already saw Texas with Ibogaine. We're looking at New York next. In addition to that, we got what's going on with cannabis at several levels, the CBD oils, cannabis itself, the entourage effect. When you're working edibles, the number of elderly people I see using edibles for a combination of things.
Yeah, because not everyone wants to smoke it.
Right.
But they do want the positive effects from it.
Yeah.
And literally your body has cannabinoid receptors built into your body. So that says that in some time in your life, your body is expecting to receive cannabinoids.
Yeah.
that's part of your system as a human. Okay, that's everyone has that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the things that affect serotonin levels, dopamine levels, cortisol levels, your hormonal balance. I mean, you get the right combination of terpenes and things, you're doing a hormonal reset. Sativa versus indica. All of these different things that we've lost so much science on because somebody decided to make it illegal, and all the documentation, all the experience, all the wisdom of the ages just like vanished overnight.
And because of corporations,
Right.
corporate interests, basically influencing our laws.
Well, it's because we decided we needed a paying patient more than we needed a healed human being.
Yeah. So, all right, well, to get off the depressing subject of fentanyl, which is really depressing and disheartening. Have you ever heard of the Arnold Schwarzenegger's total body workout vinyl?
Not the vinyl. No, I can't say that I have.
When I found this, I was just like, what is that? Right? So if you ever listen to this,
you need to listen
to it. It is hilarious. He's like going over like these workouts. He's like, this is what we call squats. And he's like, up, down. And it's hilarious.
We are here to pump you up.
Pretty sure this is when he was still like Mr. Olympia, and like this might be even pre-Conan the Barbarian. This is how old this is. His English wasn't very good. This is probably one of the most hilarious things that I've ever listened to in my life.
It's quality.
Yeah, it is as good as any comedy. And it's Arnold. But God, I maybe I might be the only person on earth that owns this because I've never seen it.
Doubt it. Well, one of the few. How about that?
Yeah, I'm one of the few.
You're one of the few.
So that was a final treasure I found.
Okay, dude, let's jump into some questions here.
Right.
You could quantum teleport to your younger self. What piece of advice do you give yourself and why?
Don't stress it, man. I think that's one of the big things is because when I was young, I spent an awful lot of time worrying about what other people thought, trying to make sure that other people were happy because, I felt that my role in their life was to be there for them, to help fix and solve their problems. That was one of those things. By the time I hit 25, 30, I started realizing, you know what? I can't fix people who don't want to be fixed.
Who are not seeking to be fixed.
Who are not seeking to be fixed. It doesn't matter how much I love them, how much I care for them.
Or what you say.
Or what I say.
Absolutely.
If they don't want to be fixed, you can't fix them. There is no amount of work, effort, love that you can put into somebody who doesn't want to be fixed. And you end up just burying yourself until the point where you become frustrated, where you become bitter, where you reach a point where you don't want to be
because
fixed.
Of the emotional commitment.
Yeah, because of the emotional commitment and the emotional drain.
Yeah.
And it's like, you really need to step back, take care of yourself, and come at your relationships from a position of being whole.
Cool.
Okay, decent answer.
Next question. What is the best music performance you have ever been to and seen personally, live? The best one. The one that stands out in your mind.
Okay. High school. I saw Chicago.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Saw Chicago, Taco Bell Arena when it was something else.
They played the Karate Kid song?
I think it was before Karate Kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I did do the Grateful Dead once.
Cool.
I think those two probably got to be my top.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Your service gave you a unique perspective of things in this country, how we operate, what we think, what we feel, all this. What is it that you think gives you a different point of view than most people due to your service? Because in my opinion, service members are the backbone of all of us. They have a better insight into what's happening in the government, what's happening on the full scale they should have a little bit more word than your average person who literally just watches TV and forms their opinion from that, right?
So one of the things about being a veteran, especially during the global war on terror, is you will see third world countries. You will participate in combat operations. You will immerse yourself in those cultures. It's like it's one thing to walk into a Mediterranean restaurant. It's another to walk the street in Kabul. Where you start to understand the nature of the cultures in these other worlds, not just the language. One of the things I did before the global war on terror kicked off was I was a Korean linguist. And I went to Korea. I spent a year in Korea. I was in Korea when the towers fell.
Cool.
But I was there in Korea working. I was living in the town, in the community, interacting with the Koreans that were part of what I call a camp town or Chichinchon. And starting to understand the culture and the American interaction, what it was like to be an occupying force in, a country where you were a clear minority. You start looking at how that affects. It's like literally one of my holiest experiences ever was on the top of Mount Sinjar in Iraq.
Huh.
Okay, this was a mountain, the peak 3,000 feet above the plains. It's just this rift in the desert that comes up. But when you're up on the top of Mount Sinjar and you're looking south over Iraq, your feet are on the ground, but you are so high above the plains that you can see the curve of the earth.
Wow. That's cool.
And it's like you understand the idea of being in a place where the gods have walked. And some of these experiences are only experiences you can have if you've been someplace outside of the 150 miles from where you were born.
Yeah, you're not going to experience that on TV.
No. You're not going to walk over the same cobblestones that Alexander did when he crossed Afghanistan on his way to India. But you take a look at the way all of these things happen, and you understand the machine that sent us there, because you're part of it. You're part of that cog in the machine. And you look at the way we interact, the way we distribute U.S. aid funds in impoverished areas, the way that things that were intended to make sure young women were taught to read are now being turned into headquarters for warlords.
Yep.
You just watch the way the money goes in and gets transformed into something entirely different than what you were told to be there for. And then you come back and you take a look at what's happening. You understand you went there for the wrong reasons, not the reasons you were told. You went there for the right reasons. You went there because you believed you were going there to make the world a better place, not just for your country, but for the country you were going to visit. You were going to eliminate injustice. You were going to destroy terror. And it's like, no, it's about brown and root profits. And it's like, so you come back and you start looking at the way things operate within our own government. It's like we see Doge, the effects of what it's done. It's gone in, it's uncovered incredible amounts of fraud, waste, and abuse within our government. We find out that we are using taxpayer money to fund non-government organizations that are actively sabotaging the United States of America. And recognizing that we really need to go in and clean house.
It's overdue.
It's way overdue.
Yeah.
There are institutions that just need to go away and be replaced with nothing, and new institutions to stand up to help ensure that we are empowered to govern ourselves the way the Constitution originally intended.
All right. So we only have 3 more questions for you now.
Okay.
All right. What is your favorite quote of all time?
Favorite quote of all time, Frank Herbert. It is not that power corrupts, but that power attracts the corruptible.
I like it. Very good.
And it's one of those things you need to understand if you truly want to go in and fight. This thing is, the people we need in charge to set the stage aren't the people who want the job. I don't want the job. The job sucks. It's a miserable job. People are going to hate me. But the thing is it's a job that needs to be done, and it needs to be done right if we're going to ensure that people are allowed the opportunity to govern themselves.
Yeah. You have to be brave to step into the political arena. You really do. Because they'll tear you apart.
Absolutely.
Brave or corrupt. Okay, what's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote?
Yeah, you.
What is best in life? Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the limitations of the women and children.
That's quality one. Thank you, Conan. I believe mine is, don't believe the lie of the sheep, for he is still asleep.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a good quote session right there.
Yar. Okay, next question. One of my last. What's your dream car? And why is it Lexus? No, I'm kidding.
Toyota Sienna minivan.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Mostly American made.
Lasts forever.
Spacious back. Lasts forever. Mm-hmm. Good quality engine. It'll stick around for a while. Plenty of seating for you, your friends, family, the kids. Great grandpa car.
Incognito.
Mm-hmm. It's like, who knows, the long-haired hippie dudes driving around in, the soccer mobile. Mm-hmm. But it's a good all-purpose, lots of cargo room. You need to bring home stuff from, Home Depot.
So you're saying if you won the Powerball, this is the car you would go buy?
Yes. If I won the Powerball, I'd head straight down to the Toyota dealership. I want a Toyota Sienna minivan. Okay, I'll get the luxury package because I want the captain seat with the heated tush. But at the end of the day, it's because I see it as a versatile utility vehicle. And if my house ever burns down, I can sleep in it.
Well, I like that you know what you like. That's good.
But a Jaguar's not a bad alternative.
Yeah. Okay. Right? Okay, last question of the day, and this one's a really good one. Okay, this one is inspired from Pinky to Brain. You're taking over the world tonight. How are you doing it? Be as evil as you want.
Oh. Why do I have to be evil?
But you don't have to be.
You don't have to be. Nobody's
no,
you mean nice as you want, but you're taking over the world.
Right. If I'm taking over the world, what I do is I am now the senator on the Intelligence Committee, and I walk into Palantir's office and I say, give me all the dirt. Then I start calling up world leaders and say, I know what you did.
I got the dirt.
I got the dirt. Okay, here's what needs to happen. But really, when it comes down to, it's intelligence is no. Now, where that's evil from this perspective is it's what's been done to our government for, 50
so
years.
You would leverage yourself into world domination.
Right. That's one of those things, if I were to take over the world. But at the end of the day, I don't want to take over the world. I want people to be able to live, I'm here to take over the world so I can leave you alone.
See, that's great.
Right? Yeah. But sometimes you got to call up a world leader or two and say, hey, you got to stop what you're doing, bud.
Yeah. And really, our world leaders need to talk to each other. And and just not talking to world leaders just because you don't like what they're doing.
Right.
Not talking to them is actually terrible. It's terrible. So when someone I'm sorry if you don't like Trump, but the fact that he's willing to go talk to the most.
He's been to North Korea.
Yeah. The most, our most strongest opponents.
He talks to Xi. He talks to Putin. He talks to all of these world leaders. They're all players in the game.
And that's what we need.
We need somebody who's willing to walk up, talk to these world leaders, man to man, and say, our people, our countrymen, the people who chose us to represent and lead their nations deserve better than warfare, death, destruction, and famine.
I like it. And so on that note right there, let's end this podcast. Give us a shout out to your organization again.
Okay.
Kind Idaho.
So anything you want to plug.
Yep.
back to this, kindidaho.org. This is about medical freedom, your medical choice. You should not be restricted from using the medicine that works best for you. And medical freedom goes through so many different topics. You know, want to be able to cover some of them now, but it's not my place, not my time. The other thing is, I am running for U.S. Senate. I am running against Jim Risch for the seat, U.S. Senate, because we need to clean house. We need to give the power back to you, the people. And for that, go to joeevansforsenate.com. joeevansforsenate.com.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Joe.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming on the podcast,
Appreciate it.
and we hope to have you on in the future as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been a great evening.
You know, so maybe later this year when you're getting closer to the election,
Absolutely.
we can have you on again and have a conversation with you, because this was really good. We had a lot of fun. Thank you, and
Thank
good
you,
luck
Chet.
on the petition.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thanks for coming with the petition for me signing. I
Absolutely.
really appreciate that.